Kongversation.
Oh, I'm on the ferry of the damned due to my pirate-like exploits in Season 5. Does this mean the ferryman will let me come back to life? This is wonderful. So much for karmic retribution. Oh, yeah, we're docking in hell.
Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I'm Jeff Onan.
And welcome to yet another Sea of Thieves episode of the Kongversation. Although, to be fair, we haven't done one in a few months, Jeff. And I feel like this episode is one people should listen to. Even if people out there don't play Sea of Thieves. They're like, I come here for another 4-hour episode about Banjo and Kazooie and Smash Brothers. You know, and I say, why don't you give this a chance? Because I feel like if you didn't like Sea of Thieves before, you're going to like it now. And you need to listen to what we have to say. You need to take your medicine, people, because we're going to be talking about the Sea of Thieves Anniversary update on this episode of the Kongversation, which, without getting too much into it before we do due diligence and that whole routine, it fundamentally changes the game so much.
It's a game changer.
This is essentially Sea of Thieves 2 folded into the confines of Sea of Thieves 1. It's drastically a different game at this point, and really it does a disservice just to call it the anniversary update, because it honestly, it feels like something...
They're literally selling a different version of the game that they're titling Sea of Thieves Anniversary Edition, which in addition to, having the updated content, it comes with a couple of cosmetics that are... but anyway, the fact that they're selling a different product with a different title goes to show how big a release this is for them and for the fans.
Yeah,
which is us.
I would say this is the leap from, say, Donkey Kong Country to Donkey Kong Country 2. That's what Sea of Thieves Year 1 to Sea of Thieves Anniversary update is. But we'll be getting into all of that in just a bit. I got to hit due diligence because I have no interest in doing a 4-hour episode this time. That destroyed me, Jeff. That literally had a negative impact on my health. So when I was doing that with Malik last time, it was all good fun. But around the 15th call, maybe a little bit before, I started to feel desperately ill. And funny enough, going at it, all hopped up on speed or whatever it is I put in my body to do these, and doing it for 4 hours when I was already sleep deprived, already just completely stretched thin. It wasn't a good idea, and I ended up just completely destroying my body for a few days afterwards. So,
but we learned a lesson.
Well, I learned a lesson. I learned that, you know what, maybe 4-hour podcasts aren't done by anybody else for a reason. But that's not to say I'm not going to ever do one again, because of course I will, because I don't learn my lessons for a very long time. But it's still recent enough that it's definitely not going to be this one. So, with that in mind, let's just blaze through due diligence. So please support me on Patreon, because I don't have health insurance, and that doctor visit certainly didn't help. dkvine.com/Patreon. Seriously, please, with the YouTube demonetization, it really does help a great deal, and I appreciate it. And you get free shit in the mail. You get stickers, Jeff. Now, Jeff, as somebody who's received these stickers in the past, can you speak to the quality of the stickers and how they brightened your life?
Well, I'm not going to just shill for you, Hyle, but I will say that the stickers are good as far as stickers go.
Yeah.
And I like them so much that I actually have them in I have a scrapbook of not just DK Vine stuff, but I have several pages in my scrapbook that is just DK Vine stickers and Christmas cards and such. You get a Christmas card with a unique bit of Cameron Regal art on it every year, which is brightens up my whole dark and cold winter season. So I'd say it's worth it if you have between $1 and $1 million to give monthly. Give one of those amounts, or don't.
It
doesn't go to me. I'm not getting it. So just do what you want.
If the scrapbooking pitch didn't sell you, I don't know what will. So
They're really good stickers. I actually, you know what? If you like Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong related accessories, you're gonna love these stickers.
although we have to clarify, these aren't in any way Donkey Kong characters on the stickers. They're completely unique original creations that are merely inspired by Donkey Kong.
Yeah, they're like the ukulele to Banjo-Kazooie kind of. It's it's a different take on the, kind of.
K Crazy Croco is in no way similar to King K. Rool. I don't know why people are saying that. It's ridiculous. I had 20 lawyers pour over this, and they all agree. Nope, this is completely legally distinct. Also, I don't know how I can afford 20 lawyers. So please, dkvine.com/Patreon, because I'm going to bring in 5 more lawyers for next year's stickers. I can't keep this up. Also, we're on social media. Apparently Twitter just decided to force me to use the new, desktop Twitter layout, and it's terrible, but, I'm gonna try to power through it.
You don't use a third party, you just use a third party, thing that you can, I use TweetDeck, which is a separate browser app that I can have multiple Twitter accounts signed into and different decks that I want there. And I'm not shilling for TweetDeck either, by the way, fans at home. But I'm just saying, Hyle, find a third-party one that suits you, and then, Twitter can just, suck on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I don't need TweetDeck, or at least I didn't, because I don't have my own personal Twitter account. I am literally nothing but DK Vine. But
look at how you can have multiple feeds going, so I can have one feed is just my feed of, like, the people I follow. Yeah. One feed is my notifications, every notification I get from a like or a retweet or a comment. And then I have another feed that could just be my direct messages. And then I have all displayed like in columns on the one page. Look around, people. There's a lot of good little... this is going to be 4 hours, isn't it?
It is. Also, I don't know if you just heard that, but a giant bolt of lightning and then
was that?
thunder.
I thought I heard that.
Yeah, it just rattled the entire office here. And
there's a force at work that doesn't want me shilling for TweetDeck.
No, absolutely not. I think we found that the higher powers, the deities out there, completely hate TweetDeck, and I think that's a strike against it. I think
the people at home need to make their own informed decision.
Yeah, we better be quick about this, because I might be struck by lightning at some point, or at the very least lose power. So anybody in the live stream, I apologize in advance if suddenly I go dark and then the stream goes dark. That's what happened, and hopefully I'm not dead, but I guess that will be a good cliffhanger. We'll see. Anyway, so follow us on social media while you can. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're also on Instagram again. Joe Mudd is running the Instagram account. And you can follow us on Jiffy, or Giphy, as you would say, Jeff. Or Jeff. Gif? Gaff, yeah. But dkvine.com/Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Jiffy. And we're also /PooTube for our YouTube channel. Still keeping up with that. Very, very strong form of protest there. And our 20th anniversary, DK Vine's 20th anniversary, is coming up next month.
Yeah, not Hyle and I's 20th anniversary. We're not married.
No, Jeff, although I think you would make a terrific husband, I have to say.
Well, back at you, babe.
Thank you. So DK Vine's 20th anniversary, it's on August 22nd, but we will be having 7 days of festivities, and it will be running from Sunday, August 18th through Saturday, August 24th. So Shark Week is this coming week, and people are going to be upset when Shark Week is over, but to that I say, don't worry, because later in the summer, there's something even better than Shark Week. It's DK Vine's 20th anniversary week. And we're going to have surprise videos. We're going to have daily giveaways on Twitter. And, of course, a very special Kongversation episode. Yep. So we got a lot in the works. And
if you like Shark Week, our week is going to have just as much, if not more, blood.
No, yeah. I say surprise videos. Yeah, I'm gonna try leeches out because I feel like
I didn't like that sentence. Nope.
no. Okay, well, I'm just saying I can't afford the doctor, so if I'm gonna do a 4-hour podcast, I have to do something to stay healthy, and I feel like bloodletting and leeches are the way to go. So I think based on what I know sells on social media from this week, I'm gonna put 5 leeches on my toes and go from there. So
This is becoming a very weird Sea of Thieves episode so far.
when can you fish with leeches?
Yes, leeches are one of the bait items that have been added to the game in the anniversary update. Look at that. We're on
Look
task.
at that. That would be a great segue if I was done with due diligence.
But you're not.
No, because you got to help us get Nintendo President Shintaro Furukawa on the Kongversation for our Spotlight episode for Mario Golf, parentheses Game Boy Color, this October. And, Jeff, I don't know if this is going to happen. I'm starting to sweat a little bit.
Well, look at everybody right now is a little focused on Area 51. But I think when that blows over, they'll turn their attention to getting Nintendo President Shintaro Furukawa on the Kongversation Spotlight episode for Mario Golf, parentheses Game Boy Color. It's just it's the flavor of the week right now, Area 51. They'll move on.
Yeah, they will. Now, we just all need to storm his home, or his office. I don't want to interrupt him as home. That would be impolite. But if everybody storms the Nintendo headquarters and knocks on his office and just tells him about the Kongversation, I'm sure he would agree to be on the episode. Because who wouldn't agree to be on a podcast after hundreds, if not thousands of people storm his door? I think that would really put him in a good mood and really lift his spirits enough to say, I want to do this. So, yeah, please, people, don't break any laws, but be bold, be daring, do something to get his attention, because I sure as hell am out of ideas. So there's that. But in the meantime, if you need inspiration to get his attention, you could still look for the missing episode of The Kongversation, Season 6. Nobody has found it yet, Jeff, and people are looking for it. There is momentum here in the search, but it is still on the milk carton as missing. And, you know, as somebody who doesn't really agree with lactose at this point in his life, I don't like that I have an episode of my podcast on a milk carton. That upsets me. That really turns me off. So I want to get it off that milk carton. So help us find it. And if you are the first person to find us and at us on Twitter using TweetDeck, I don't care, you can get an autographed copy of Sea of Thieves #1, the comic book, autographed by the author, Jeremy Whitley. So, a lot at stake here, no pressure, but you could go down in history as the person who found it, and what an honor that would be. I feel like there would be folk songs about you.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah. Probably not, though. You're probably wasting your time.
There's no way to know until you do it, so get out
Right.
there and do your best.
And, of course, the first person to record a roughly 6-hour audio commentary on our audio commentary of Platonic's ukulele commentaries will get to pick a topic of the Kongversation for us to record this season within reason. So,
And
I
this
don't even know
season
when-
is half over, so you better get on it. Like, we're running out of episodes.
So we were having our staff meeting before we recorded this, our weekly staff meeting, because we're professionals about this, right? So
Staff with
I
a
was
PH, because we can't go to the doctor, so we just get on. Anyway,
I was showing the staff the list of episodes coming up for the Kongversation and how everything is booked up pretty much through October. Like, this is what we're doing this week. This is what we're doing this week. So literally, I don't know when we would have time to get this episode in. So it would have to be probably November at this point, or December, but we'll do it. We'll do it. We'll find time to do it, but you better get on it because the schedule is filling up quickly. This is a very busy year. Yeah, I wasn't expecting this going into 2019, but yeah, wow. We have got a lot of exciting episodes lined up, some that I can't even share, a lot in the works. So stick with us. Hopefully you won't be turned off by this episode, but
no, this is going to be a really good episode. I could tell already.
Is it? Is it? Because
No, for sure. Don't worry.
We're several minutes into it, and I feel like we're betraying that promise.
There's only room to go up. Let's just focus on that.
Oh, okay, that's a positive attitude to have. I like that, Jeff. Thank you for setting my spirit straight.
You're welcome.
Also, would you like to plug Golden Sands blog posts, since it would be thematically appropriate to do so?
Sure, certainly. Golden Sands blog posts is a blog, which I run. I'm Jeff. And you can find it on medium.com/golden-sands-blog post. You can also find it on Twitter under @goldensandsblog. And from Twitter, you can find the link to the Medium blog and vice versa. And basically, that is a Sea of Thieves themed blog that walks you through all the news. Sea of Thieves moves so fast. It's like news on that game every single week. And if you can't keep up, like Hyle or every other person, you can use my blog, because I'm the only guy keeping up with it for you. And you can go there. You can find everything you need to find, including walkthroughs on latest updates, like yesterday's big new event, which will be live streaming on the DK Vine Mixer. So, Golden Sands blog post, check it out or don't. I put a lot of time into it. It's just, I don't get any money from it either, so just do it, do or don't. Do or don't check it out. I honestly, at this point, I don't know. I
Jeff,
just don't
are
know
you
anymore,
okay?
Hyle. I don't know.
Jeff, that wasn't a very self-assured pitch. That kind of brought me down. You were just supposed to lift my spirits, and now I'm feeling
I'm very
bad.
up and down today, Hyle. I don't know. I feel like we need to get talking about stuff I care about, not like plugging Facebook and
You don't care about my Facebook page?
I don't care about your Giphy and your PooTube, Hyle.
Damn it, Jeff! I thought you cared about me. I thought you cared about my life's work. Which
I
is
pick and
PooTube.
choose. I pick and choose what I care about. You know what I do care about? I care about Sea of Thieves, the anniversary update. Look at that transition.
That so good. So it's that type of quality craftsmanship that you'll find in Golden Sands blog post.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that sarcasm? No, it wasn't.
It's a very good blog if you have a very, very narrow set of what you want out of a blog, which is Sea of Thieves news and walkthroughs, and you're gonna find it all in one place.
Yeah, if you like things that are even more narrow than DK Vine, check it out. So, Sea of Thieves anniversary update. So, Jeff, we have been living in the world of the anniversary update. Has it been about 3 months now?
April 30th. So all of May, all of June, and about half of July. So to say 2.5 months since the anniversary update.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I know we'd already touched upon this at the beginning for the pitch for people who haven't really gotten into Sea of Thieves to stick with the episode, but this has really fundamentally changed Sea of Thieves, and I'm somebody who has loved the game from not even day one, from day zero. I've adored this game, but it really is such a much more robust, deep experience, and there really is something, I think, for everyone now, and it really is. I think it fulfills the promise that Sea of Thieves had initially, like the elevator pitch of Sea of Thieves. Everything that was kind of missing from the game has now been filled in, thanks to everything added with the anniversary update. Essentially.
I mean, giving a little background on what the anniversary update is, throughout last year, every several months or so, they had a very large update that with a title to it and a lot of fanfare, and it brought in a lot of new content, right? And each of those updates, from the Hungering Deep to the Cursed Sails to the Forsaken Shores to the Shrouded Spoils, these were all sub-teams within the Sea of Thieves team it was a different team on each one working on their own update and then staggering those releases so that, they could always have somebody working on what's coming later, And for the anniversary update, they kind of changed that schedule a bit, and they had almost all of the team's efforts, all of the different teams within Sea of Thieves, were all working towards releasing something for this big, massive update. And when I say massive, we're now officially going into Sea of Thieves 2.0 in terms of the patch release title. So you had a whole team working on the Arena, which is a new mode of Sea of Thieves that's a timed competitive matches. There was a whole team at Sea of Thieves working on the Hunter's Call, which is a new company focused on fishing and cooking and hunting. And they also added in new types of mechanics around the ship interactions and damage types and adding in harpoons on the ship, all kinds of cool stuff. And then there was another team working on Tall Tales, The Shores of Gold, which was essentially Sea of Thieves story mode, Sea of Thieves campaign, a linear story, a 20-hour campaign that was added to Sea of Thieves. Any one of these individual updates would have been a whole update in and of themselves, but they released them all at once. So
yeah, it was honestly a little overwhelming because there's just so much to take in, and it all dropped at once. And so, like, we haven't even played the Arena, or I haven't played the Arena with you guys outside of E3. That's how much there has been to do. I barely focused on the Hunter's Call. My focus has mostly been on Tall Tales, and that we just finished Tall Tales the other week. So, and when I say finished, we haven't even 100%ed it. We've just played through it, or at least I just played through it once with you guys, and that took, like you said, over 20 hours to complete. So it really is just so much to absorb, and it scratches so many different itches that different gamers would have. So I think the focus of our discussion this episode will be on Tall Tales, because I think that is the mode that, like, longtime vintage Rare fans would get the most out of, or have been wanting from Sea of Thieves. And maybe they tried out Sea of Thieves when it first launched, and they thought, this feels too bare bones. I don't like that there's no real story to sink my teeth into. I don't like this idea that I'm making my own stories because I want a Rare story told at me. I think Tall Tales is the perfect compromise for that. And we'll be devoting, I think, the bulk of this episode to this, but Arena and Hunter's Call are definitely worth discussing too. And we did discuss the Arena on our E3 wrap-up episode that we did 2 episodes ago. So we probably don't need to get too deep into it, but it is worth getting into a little bit. So why don't we start there?
Sure. Yeah.
Now, like I said on the E3 wrap-up episode, the Arena is the mode I was kind of most apprehensive about, because it is not a mode that I would normally gravitate to. I'm not somebody who is a competitive gamer. I like story, I like lore, I like immersing myself in the game world. And so to have essentially what is a short form kind of multiplayer competitive, let's see who is the best at this mode, was, in my mind, off-putting and intimidating. And I just thought, I'm going to be terrible at this. And this is kind of counter to how I play Sea of Thieves. And I was completely wrong, because this is actually a lot less intimidating than I thought. It's a hell of a lot of fun, especially when you play it with friends. And it is the most similar to the original version or build of Sea of Thieves that I played at Rare in 2016. So what the hell was I worried about? I don't know. I was so down on myself. What the hell's wrong with me?
Yeah, well, I think that, so the Arena kind of was born out of some of these show builds that they had of the game that, Sea of Thieves is a game that can be kind of hard to show off at trade shows.
Yes.
You can imagine set sail from this outpost when you play the game at home, and you've got open possibilities, and it takes you 3 or 4 hours before you're satisfied, and might want to stop, or maybe you play for 8 or 10, which I sometimes do. They created these kind of more linear builds, or they put a bunch of players in a tight space and tried to get them to get some action in under half an hour, which is great for showing off the mechanics of the game and kind of the highs of emotions. And I think that the arena really is built on that. You've got either 24-minute timed matches. Everyone is confined to a small subsection of the map. So with 5 galleons of the pirate ships confined in a tight section of the map, you're going to get into a lot of action. But there's still a lot of room for tactics and options, because the game is not all about who can rack up the most kills or sinking other ships. The game also involves treasure hunting. So you have this sort of choice of how do I want to play it? What will get me the most points? There's this island over here with a lot of chests that we could go dig up these chests like pirates, but that island is contested and we might get into a fight. And then there's an island over there with not as many chests, but it's wide open. So it leaves all these tactical decisions. And in a 24-minute time limit, it just goes by like a breeze, and it's such high octane, crazy action all the time. But it's a lot of fun, especially it really rewards coordination and planning more than like actual skill in combat. Plenty of players can have really great twitch reflexes in a shooter environment, but what really wins this mode is teamwork, which is great.
Horse magic, as we call it.
Yes, horse magic, but we're not going to elaborate on that for anyone who doesn't know.
No. I like to alienate people as much as possible. It's the ethos this site has thrived on for 20 years. The thing about the arena that actually first made me comfortable with the idea was how they incorporated it into the world of the game. So it's not it's access through the menu when you first start the game, separately from what's now called adventure mode, I believe. Yep. But it still takes place firmly within the world of adventure mode, and they even went to all the trouble of having a place on the actual game map in the world of the game where the arena is located. Even if you can't access it from within adventure, that's where it is, and you can go explore the outside confines of it. And then when you select it on the menu, then you're inside of it. But just that little level of thought and detail, and to make sure that and you're still like leveling up. Like, the arena is a trading company unto itself. It's headed up by the characters from the comics, the Pirate Lord's children. And
this is one of my favorite aspects of this, is that, yes, it's a separate mode, but it's still tied to your overall Sea of Thieves journey, because Sea of Thieves is about your path to becoming a pirate legend, which you do by leveling up your reputation with different trading companies. So they bring in this new mode, and they say, by the way, this new mode is a new trading company, and that is another alternate option for you. If you want to level up that trading company, that can be one of the ones that you get reputation in on your path to pirate legend. And then on top of that, they tied in characters from the Sea of Thieves comic books and brought them into the game world that you can interact with, and it explains why this new mode is here. It's got that very Sea of Thieves touch and that very rare touch. Yeah,
just that attention to detail that other developers would probably say that's not important, it's not necessary, but it's always been present in rare games, especially what's considered the modern era of rare games, which I guess we pinpoint as Donkey Kong Country going forward. The launch of the Rareware era, and then everything after that. Just that, like, extra mile that is so appreciated by Rare fans is present just everywhere in Sea of Thieves. And yeah, that they found a way to incorporate it and make it make sense. And so if you're keeping everything consistent in your head for your pirate character and the world they inhabit, it works. And I have not actually, I don't have any arena cred for my pirate character yet, but I'm looking forward to breaking that drought soon, because I just played it at E3 with the show floor pirates, which I don't even know if they were the pirates from the Rare staff this time around, like they were on the show floor builds of the past. But what wasn't played with my pirates, so I'm looking forward to getting out there with you and Cameron and I don't know, Shane and Briegel. I don't know who we'll be playing with, but it'll be nice to actually do it from home, because I'm surprised how much I enjoyed it. And it really, like you said, it isn't about how good you are at combat or how many kills you can rack up. It is all just about having a good strategy with your team. And if you're playing it with friends, that can really be a thrilling experience. Because I liken Sea of Thieves, when I first played it, to like how it must feel to go into battle, like in a war, but with less consequences, because you're not actually getting shot at. But it scratches that itch that's kind of buried in the recesses of our brain from like the time of the cavemen, where we had to like be in tribes and fight one another for resources. That's what it feels like. It satisfies some sort of primal urge that's just buried in our genetics. So,
and it should be noted on the record that that in the 2 games that we played at E3, Hyle and I, we won both of them.
yeah.
And any third game that some people might purport to have existed, it didn't happen. I never played any third game at E3 on the show floor. But we won 2, though. The only 2 that we played, we won, and they were great.
Right. And any rumors about a third one is a hoax.
Craig
Duncan.
He didn't play in a third game with us, because that didn't happen, and then he didn't win it either. Because if it didn't happen, then he didn't win it, so that just makes sense.
But if it did happen, he orchestrated it in such a way that he stacked the decks against us just to humiliate us.
He was sitting behind the control panel, pulling levers to make sure we got really bad RNG.
Yeah.
Anyway,
absolutely. Yeah.
The arena's great, but what's interesting is that's the first time they've split Sea of Thieves on the main menu into different modes. So when you choose to go into the arena, it's a separate lobby, separate matchmaking, entirely separate world, really, in terms of matchmaking and servers, from what is now dubbed the adventure mode. So they've split things up a little bit there, but they also didn't neglect adventure mode, because the bulk of the anniversary update was a lot of very substantial updates to mechanics in the adventure mode.
Right.
Starting with the addition of the Hunter's Call.
Yeah, so the Hunter's Call is a new trading company. And now the trading companies before this were the Gold Hoarders, the Merchant Alliance, and the Order of Souls. Basically, just different ways to have experiences out on the ocean. You could look for the treasure chest, X marks the spot, or Riddle Quest. You could fight skeletons and bring their skulls back to the Order of Souls, or you could do the least popular one, which was be UPS drivers on the ocean for the Merchant Alliance. And I like the Merchant Alliance quests. They're just time consuming, and they're not as crunchy as some of the other modes. Like, they're not satisfying, I guess. It just viscerally, it's just a lot more like, I am literally delivering a package to you. And so I could see like why that would be off-putting, but I do like it. I wish I could play more traditional Merchant Alliance voyages. There's just never really an opportunity to do so, since I mostly play when there's a big update or a build rat adventure. But anyway, the fourth big trading company, not counting the fifth with the arena, or I guess the sixth when you count the pirate legend Athena quest, is the Hunter's Call. And the Hunter's Call is mostly centered around fishing, because fishing is what so many people requested the entire first year of Sea of Thieves being out on the market was, while we're doing these long voyages out on the ocean, while we're sailing from island to island, it sure would be great to have a way to pass the time that doesn't involve playing instruments or drinking and puking on Hyle. So what could we do in the meantime? Well, gee, there's an ocean, it's full of fish. It would be great if we could fish. And lo and behold, fishing is something they were promising for months, really like almost the entirety of the year. They're like, we'll be adding fishing, and they added fishing, and fishing is great. As somebody who doesn't fish in real life, being a strict, vegetarian, and every life is precious, la 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 la, like love the fish. fishing is so much fun in the game. Like the mechanic they devised for it is actually really addictive.
Yeah, and what I really love about the way they've implemented fishing is that it's entirely done in an immersive way. All of the feedback that you need to determine how am I going to reel in this fish or how am I going to react to what the fish is doing, it is all done through, on-screen visual cues and haptic feedback in a way that's immersive. There is no UI associated. There's no, it's a Sea of Thieves kind of core design tenet that, not to have too much UI.
It's a Greg Mails design tenet. It's going back to the first Donkey Kong Country is we don't want UI because that will break immersion.
Right. So it's done in a very immersive way, and fishing can be done for two different reasons. One, you can catch a fish, and then you can sell the fish that you've caught to the Hunter's Call and level up that brand new company that you've got. You can level up your reputation with them. Alternatively, you can eat the fish.
Yes.
And that feeds into a whole new, basically completely upended their health system. Because previously the health system involved eating bananas. If you had lost some health, you eat a banana, you gain some health, and that's it. And you can find bananas in resource barrels around the world. And that was very simple, and that was it. And now they've got a variety of fruit that there's bananas, mangoes, coconuts, pomegranates, and pineapples, and they all have different kind of health benefits and stats to them. But also on top of that, you've got meat. So if you catch a fish, you've got to cook it, and that adds in another new mechanic. So you can cook. There's a cooking pot in the hull of the ship, and if you cook your fish, now you have cooked meat, and that is a really valuable food item that plays into your health bar, and it creates this regenerative pool of health. And so there's really deep mechanics now around health regeneration in this game, when before it was just very bare bones, very simple. And now you've got this choice. Yeah, you've got a choice. Do I want to eat the food I catch, or do I want to sell it to the Hunter's Call and get reputation? And now you can and so you have to put in work to catch a fish, and you got to put in work to cook it. But then the payoff is having this really valuable health item that can really make the difference in battle, or you get some money for it and some reputation.
Yeah, and I have a code of ethics for my pirate. So for and he's a bit of a hypocrite, but he is a pirate. So cut me some slack here. It's just my ancestor. It's not me. So my pirates will fish, and he will cook the fish, but he will not eat the fish. So, my pirate refuses to eat any meat, no matter how low his health is. So he's fruit only, but he will sell fish to the Hunter's Call. But he will not kill pigs or chickens. He will kill sharks because the sharks are biting him all the time. But he only kills in self-defense, and really just fuck fish, I guess, is what my pirate says. Yeah, I don't know. There's a few bridges I won't cross. In the Hunter's Call, but I will fish, and it is quite fun. And cooking is quite fun, actually. It's fun just to cook weird shit, like throwing fruit on the stove and watching it burn. There's no reason to do so. It's completely pointless, but it's satisfying. And I think it's because I'm a pyromaniac, just a little bit. Like, I've got it under control. I'm not, crazy, but it is satisfying to watch things burn. It's mesmerizing. Have you ever sat in front of a fireplace and just thrown things into it?
Bonfire, yeah. I sit around the bonfire and, I just stare and watch this stuff burn and change colors. Of course. That's a human trait.
Have you ever burned gummy bears thrown gummy bears in a bonfire?
No. What about regular bears?
No, God, no. Gummy bears, though, do it. I recommend everybody do this at least once in their lives because it is the most weirdly soothing thing to watch that little bear melt.
Well,
and I realize I'm coming across like a psychopath right now, and I apologize.
You know what? I think that everybody has a little bit of take-home homework, and they're going to go home. They're going to try that with the gummy bears. But we're going to move on.
Well, no, hold on.
Nope, we're not done.
Andre in the live stream chat just asked me, what about gushers, Hyle? And I've never burned gushers in a bonfire. I want to try it, and
It's a
summer's
little
great time
expensive
to try it.
as far as gummies go to just burn your. I mean, that's a high-end gummy.
And when I say
terms of
gummy
cost.
bears, I don't actually buy gummy bears because they have gelatin in them, and strict vegetarian here. But
Vegetarians
there are,
vegetarians can eat gelatin.
no, we can.
You can't.
I
I thought
mean-
it was just vegans.
Well, I am a vegan when it I'm a vegan when it comes to the death of an animal. And I've mostly given up milk, but I'm not a strict vegan. Anyway, this is getting completely off the point. My point was, I've never burned gushers because gushers are too delicious, and they're gonna go towards my mouth more than they would the fire. But I want to try it, Andre. You've inspired me, and if I can make video content for this for DK Vine, I'll try to come up with a reason to do so and work it into my busy schedule, and I'll burn some gushers this summer.
But what's really great about the Hunter's Call is that you don't set out on a voyage and say, all right, we need to go catch these fish over here and then deliver them to over there. That's how every other company works. Instead, it's just a background activity. You can be doing anything you want. You could be doing a Gold Hoarder voyage or Order of Soul voyage, or you could be doing a Tall Tale or anything you want. And while you're going around doing that, you can fish and you can gather meat and you can then later sell it to the Hunter's Call. And so it's a activity that you can do while doing other activities, and it really fills in the game. Really fills the empty space a little bit.
I didn't realize this is what the game needed so much, and you're right. You're absolutely right, because so much of the game was, this is what we're doing. We're focused on this. And you really needed something that was just kind of ancillary. Something that was just a fun little activity that, honestly, it gets annoying at times because, I would be focused on a tall tale and everybody else would, be fishing. And we get to the island and everybody would still, be fishing and be like, oh, can we get the fuck... can we get the fuck on the island? And I was like that until I started doing that near the end. So it really is this addicting thing. I acknowledge now that there are people who play Sea of Thieves primarily for the fishing. It's just, everything else is just kind of a bonus. It's just this great fishing simulator at this point. So, I'm also surprised about how taken I was with this, because I didn't really care about fishing in the game until we did it, until I got the hang of it. That first time I tried it was a little rough.
What's really great, too, is that there's a wide variety of fish to find. And so part of it is just the mechanic itself is a great way to kill time, to sort of fill in the blank space. It is a fun activity in and of itself. But on top of that, you have this fun sort of, oh, but what am I going to get when I catch this fish or when I cast this line? There are fish that I have not caught before, and I get rewarded for finding them. And so there's a sort of gotta catch them all element to it, which I don't know if that's trademarked. I don't know if I'm allowed to say gotta catch them all. I don't know. Well, Hyle's got the lawyers, so they'll sort it out. And you've got tons of different kinds of fish, and they have different sort of catch conditions of where can we catch this fish and under which type of bait will they be caught. So you have different types of bait you can bait your line with. And so there is a little bit of depth to it, but not so much that it's, it's like doing long division. It's very kind of intuitive in a lot of ways, but then there's depth to it. Easy to learn, difficult to master, essentially. And they also brought in some other cool stuff, like they expanded the type of ship damage, where now the mast can get knocked down by cannonballs and the wheel can get destroyed. And they added in harpoons to the ship, so you can harpoon stuff, which is really addictive and fun. But before we get too far away from Hunter's Call and into Tall Tales, I wanted to talk a little on the lore of the Hunter's Call.
Right. How you can catch Royston and how that implies he's an immortal being, and that's how he survives all of the various grillings he gets throughout the Banjo series.
Man, that's now that you mention it, that would have been a good idea if they did that. I forgot
There's
all
still
about
time.
that.
They can add it in any update. They can add Royston as a random fishing catch as a surprise Easter egg.
Just a really polygonal fish with big, googly, blinking eyes. I would love that.
They can make a realistic version of him.
Well, I think it would be better if it was just really polygonal. Like, this is the N64 fish. And you've caught him.
Right. 64-bit mode. It's like the tonic in Ukulele. Just go for it.
When I mentioned the lore of the Hunter's Call, what I was referring to is that the Hunter's Call is a clan of Merry Merrick, the shark hunter, who originally debuted in the Hungering Deep campaign.
Yeah, so it actually ties in with the first big update for Sea of Thieves. And we do an episode for every big update of Sea of Thieves. We don't do one for like the little build rat adventure updates or patches, but we do every time there's a huge update, we do a new Kongversation on it. And the first one we did after that initial Sea of Thieves episode was the Hungering Deep. And Merrick was the multi-peg-legged character who was kind of the instigator of that storyline. He got chomped up by the Megalodon, and by the Hungering one, that Megalodon, the initial Megalodon that you rose by playing his song, and you had to fight. And Merrick was the one on Sharkbait Cove who you had to meet, and he gave you the tattoo and made you the drum and did everything. And then he vanished from the game for about a year, a little bit under a year. And they brought him back, I guess just because of the popularity of that character. He became kind of this beloved figure, and they're like, well, we should probably just bring him back in and not just have him be a one-time thing. And they did so in a really clever way. They basically did a Kong family for him, and they introduced his entire extended family, and including his son, who was Derek, who was actually a player pirate who was then made an NPC, all based on his resemblance to the character of Merrick.
Yeah, so Derek was this player character, had a pirate that resembled Merrick. He took a selfie with Merrick during the Hungering Deep, and he said, "Hey, everybody, I'm Merrick's long-lost son." And that blew up. It was a very, the community loved that. Rare loved that. And they ended up canonizing that after the Hungering Deep, when they put in a bunch of Easter eggs in the game that were sort of little love letters commemorating that event after it ended. And one of them was a portrait or a painting of Merrick with Derek, which was just a painting version of that selfie that he took and put on Twitter. And now they've brought in Merrick's whole family to run this Hunter's Call company that trade in fishing and cooked meats. And Derek is one of them. So they've canonized that character, that player, sort of immortalized him, which is really cool to see. And this is not the only example of that. They're always kind of recognizing their players and putting in a lot of cool Easter eggs, which I love.
So my question, though, is when the player, Derek, is playing the game and he encounters himself, how does he explain that?
Well...
Holograms, Jeff?
It's holograms. I was going to say holograms.
Okay. It's like a TT. It's a playable character in Diddy Kong Racing, and I'm playing as TT, but holy shit, TT's in a lobby. It's almost like it's just not canon playing as TT. We're just gonna push that under the rug a little bit. I'm playing as Diddy. It doesn't matter. I don't need to figure this out.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Yeah. I'm never gonna play or probably encounter Derek, the player character, ever in my life. So I don't have to worry about this. That's on him. That's for his personal canon is just screwed up now. Whatever. They're never going to immortalize me in the game. I'm fine. So
never say never. Never say never.
Yeah.
But so with that Hunter's Call, the fishing, the cooking, the new company that you can get reputation with, the new types of food, the new varied types of ship damage that really changes up ship combat, especially in the arena where you're more likely to run into a lot of ship combat. The harpoons that you can use to harpoon onto other ships or harpoon onto rocks and turn your boat very quickly, or harpoon treasure out of the water, or harpoon players out of the water. All this cool applications, all of that stuff made a vast impact on the day-to-day life of the adventure mode.
Right.
But
yeah,
what we're most interested in was another aspect of adventure mode that they also added in the anniversary update, and that is the tall tales.
Yes. So tall tales are basically those big events, those big story-driven events like Hungering Deep and Cursed Sails and Forsaken Shores. They were all story-driven events with like big plot elements that were limited time things, but they were still like mostly centered around day-to-day life in the game. There was just like one or two big things happening that altered that. Tall Tales are a little bit different. They're more focused. They're more impactful in how they alter the gameplay temporarily, and you can do them anytime you want, so long as they're unlocked.
Right. So this is essentially a story mode or story missions, story chapters, that it tells a linear 9-part story, but it is not a separate mode from the rest of adventure. You pop. It is a shared world. It is the game's shared world that has always been there. But while you're in that shared world with other players doing their own thing, you could be going on story missions and still run into other players, still run into emergent encounters. And what I loved about how they handled this is that they didn't shy away from that and make a separate mode, and they didn't just kind of shoehorn a story mode into the shared world. They really celebrate it and have created a gameplay model that is very unique in that it benefits from being in a shared world and having random emergent encounters from the game itself and from other players that you encounter.
Yeah, they were very careful about implementing all of these changes so that it wouldn't break the original ethos of the game. And I remember like Mike Chapman, for example, going on and on about how like the vision for Sea of Thieves was that, you know, you make your own stories. Like, you are the legends within the game. It's not about NPCs. It's not about running into like legendary pirates that no players control. And like the visceral thrill of the game should be seeing another ship on the horizon and knowing a player is behind that. And as the game has evolved over the first 15 months of it being out, they have definitely gotten away from that, but never in a way that really defies that vision. They've just kind of made concessions here or there to keep it interesting, and really it's kind of the best of both worlds now, because you have NPC encounters, you have interesting characters in the lore that no players control, but that doesn't really detract at all from that original vision.
Yeah, and what's really great here is that, you know, I think that there were players who tried out Sea of Thieves and they were looking for that more kind of catered story experience, and it wasn't there, and they couldn't get into Sea of Thieves for that reason. But the people who could get into Sea of Thieves, like you and I, the people who really took to it, what we loved about it was that sort of sharing our stories with our friends and creating stories together. And I think that even though Tall Tales has brought a crafted narrative, sort of authored elements to the game that are linear and in a way, it still has that element of sharing that story with your friends.
Yeah.
And making it your own, because every time you do it, it will be different in the types of random encounters you come across and other players. And so it is different every time you do it, and it is different with your different friends. And so, yes, Rare wrote a story for Sea of Thieves that you experience in a kind of linear fashion, but there is still that element of sharing that story with players and creating that story yourself and putting your spin on it.
To bring up Mike Chapman again, because I feel like he has the best pull quotes whenever I talk with him. Like, he really like communicates what Sea of Thieves is in little tantalizing bite-sized nuggets. He compared it to the Goonies, going on an adventure with your friends, making you feel like a kid again, having an adventure like in the backyard in the summer that like actually turns into a real like quest for pirate treasure or whatever. And, something that's more probably relatable to our listeners is it reminds me of the feeling I got playing Donkey Kong Country 2-player team back in the day, like playing it with your friends, like, you're just tagging out, but you're still going on this adventure together, this magnificent, thrilling adventure through a pirate stronghold. That is what it feels like, except on a much grander scale, because we can play with 4 friends around the world from the comfort of our living room
and run into strangers.
And run into strangers too. So it really is fulfilling, I think, that promise that Sea of Thieves was back when I first played it, back before it was even, a game that was available for everyone. It was just, here is this little bit that was very much like the arena, but now imagine all these other things that are going to be on top of it. And part of that was essentially what Tall Tales is now. So this is like catnip to me. Like Tall Tales is exactly what I daydreamed about back when I was, fantasizing about what would be possible in Sea of Thieves. And so we've played through all 9 of the current Tall Tale chapters in the game, the broader Shores of Gold campaign. Not to be confused, because the 9th Tall Tale is just called the Shores of Gold, but it's all leading up to it, so it's kind of all lumped in under that when talked about. But there is the possibility for more Tall Tales in the future. Like, this is just the base.
Yeah, so when we look at those past campaigns like Hungering Deep or Her Sales, they had a little bit of a story to them, and they had like a linear sort of go to these locations and do some puzzle solving sort of, and you'll get to see the climax of the story. And those didn't have the system in place for the complexity of and the creativity and the new mechanics and everything that the Tall Tales do. And now that they've got that system down, where you've got this quest book that acts as your guide through this adventure, and you're sort of figuring out the puzzles, and you're going to different locations where they've set up special rooms and special, locations and items you're going to use and things like that. All of that system is now finished. Like, that is a designed, implemented feature of Sea of Thieves now. And so within that system, they can tell more stories in the future. And they've said they're going to. I think that in the future, they'll probably release them in smaller bits, not a 9-part chunk all at once. But yeah, we definitely haven't seen the end of that. I think that like when they come up with a big update like they did the Cursed Sails, and they had this little story in there about Wanda the Warsmith, in the future, if they have a big update, they will also include a Tall Tale that tells the story of that update.
And that will also allow you to replay it, because like one of the greatest shames of things like the Hungering Deep and Cursed Sails were you play it and they're done, and they were limited time things, so they were like snowflakes on a hot or on a warmer than usual winter day, so they didn't last very long, and you appreciated them when they fell, but they're gone forever now, except in our memories and archived videos. So, like, the great thing about Tall Tales is you can just revisit it whenever you want, and actually the game wants you to replay them again and again, because you have to play them all 5 times to get the best commendation and cosmetic rewards. So,
well, what's really great about that is that every Tall Tales also has, they don't just encourage you to replay it, but they're slightly different every time you do it, because they've got a mix of sort of there is a linear story to it, and there are beats to each section, each chapter, each sort of part of a chapter will play out the same. You'll have a certain kind of puzzle at this step, and that will get you to this item, and then this item introduces a new puzzle, and that will get you to this thing, and that's the end. They'll play out that way every time, but the specific puzzle will be different, or the location will be different, and it will add in these sort of procedural elements. And part of that is just to make it function in a shared world. Because if my crew wants to do Tall Tales Chapter 1, and your crew wants to do Tall Tales Chapter 1, and we're on the same server, the game has to have a way to tell us to go to 2 different islands, so we don't dig up the chest in the same spot and screw each other over. And the game has to be able to run those quests more than one at a time. And so they've done it in a very clever, well-designed way to handle that, but it also makes it more fun to replay.
Absolutely, yeah. And I haven't actually replayed any of them, so I'm looking forward to doing that. Although I feel I'm a little burned out just based on what happened in the last chapter, which we'll get into when we get to it. So I guess the best way to do it would be to talk about each chapter. We won't get into full details, but there will be spoilers. So if you haven't played through all of this, we will try to refrain from spoiling anything in later chapters until we get to the point, and then you can just tune us out. You can stop listening to the episode until you play that. Well, we'll try to do right by you here, but hopefully we won't slip up.
Yeah.
So
if you've done 3 out of 9, once we get to chapter 4, you can tune out and shut us off, because from this point on, we've talked about everything we're going to talk about except for each chapter. So
yeah,
you're not going to miss anything after chapter 9 except for our final thoughts. So you can come back and re-listen.
And there are cool story surprises that you really should experience for yourself, that it would be a shame if somebody just blurted it out to you. So I would recommend going down that route if you're interested at all in playing Tall Tales, and you should be. If you have access to Sea of Thieves, even if you don't own the game, if you have Game Pass, you can play it. And
this is what I'll say, every Kongversation viewer, if you have not yet played Sea of Thieves and you have an interest in doing so, and you have a way to get a copy of the game, whether it's through Game Pass or buying it, which is currently on sale or whatever, if you have a way to get access to the game, get in contact with me at Golden Sands Blog on Twitter, and I will get you into Discord, make sure that you have a full crew to play with to show you the ropes, and make sure you have a really good first impression, because I love playing with new players, and I think that if everybody had a good first experience with a crew of friends or friendly people, then they will immediately fall in love with the game. So reach out, we'll make sure you have a good time, and then you'll become hooked. And we'll get you on a friends list. We'll get you all kinds of people that you can play with.
Yeah, it really is just making sure you play with the right people. And, I'm sure there are people out there who can play with complete strangers, just get paired up randomly and have a good time. But I realize the social anxieties that would cause. So, yeah, we're here to help you out if you are trepidatious about doing that and you want to play with people you're going to feel comfortable with. We'll hook you up. We're here for you. We're here for you. So, Jeff, let's start with the first chapter, which is called The Shroud Breaker. So this kind of introduces the plot of these whole 9 chapters, or at least where the plot builds to. And why don't you really set the stage for us? Because I feel like this is your life's blood here.
Well, yeah, sure. What's great about this chapter is you can start it in any tavern in the game. The tavern is where you spawn. And so immediately when you spawn, one of the first people you can talk to is the mysterious stranger, who is a sort of envoy for the pirate lord, a mysterious figure that you can find out more about once you really complete your Sea of Thieves journey, or reach not complete. Your journey's never complete. But my point is, this is a very mysterious figure. He's one of the first people you can talk to, and right there is where you can start this journey. So even brand new players can get in on this without a lot of fuss.
Now he's called the Mysterious Stranger, but hasn't his name been established?
His name's George. Yeah, George. There used to be George and Gloria,
George.
But
yeah,
they for the sake of having his voiceover dialogue be consistent in every tavern, we just have George now. But yeah, so you start the Tall Tale the way you would start any voyage, which is voting on it by throwing a knife at a table kind of thing, although it's a book. And he introduces this, exciting, elaborate tale of the pirate lord's journey to try and reach a fabled land called the Shores of Gold, an island of gold that exists beyond the Devil's Shroud. And the Devil's Shroud, of course, is this sort of impenetrable wall of energy that surrounds the Sea of Thieves, and it keeps the outside world from getting in. And it also ebbs and flows and covers entire islands that are off in that fog. And there are some islands in that fog that are yet to be explored. The Shores of Gold is one fabled island that some very famous pirates have tried to get to in the past. And so he kind of sets you out on this journey.
Can I just say how much I absolutely adore the concept of the Devil's Shroud? It is such ridiculous horseshit that it is absolutely beautiful poetry, because it ties in so many things. It draws upon maritime legends of things like the Bermuda Triangle, and just these concepts of these realms in the sea that you get lost in and you can't escape. And it also ties into just the simple notion that we can't have players sail forever. We need to keep them confined. How do we do that beyond just having invisible walls a la the N64 era? So we're going to actually have this concept of a wall around the Sea of Thieves that just basically sinks your ship. The sky's going to turn blood red. It's going to get creepy as fuck. Robin Beelan's going to creep you out with his award-winning music, and it'll sink your ship and prevent you from going forward. But it's also there in universe for a reason, and it's what keeps the Sea of Thieves hidden as this separate realm from our own. And it'll also allow us to explain why we can add to the map going forward, because the Devil's Shroud receded a bit, and now we have all these new islands to go to. Or it can be like in Tall Tales, where we have this one particular island that we don't want players normally accessing, but we'll make allowances this one time through very contrived storytelling means, and there'll be a way to get to this particular island. I love it, Jeff. This is the kind of stuff I would have fan-wanked, but I don't have to anymore because Rare does it for me.
What's really great here, so the Shroud Breaker is the name of an ancient totem. The ancients there's a civilization of ancient people that lived in the Sea of Thieves millennia ago, before any pirates got there. And
Spirits of ancient Sea of Thieves.
Shadows of sunken Spain. Don't worry, Hyle. I'm the only co-host you have that will quote that song with you.
You're the only person in the world who would quote that song with me. I don't even think Paul McCartney remembers that song.
Well, he should. It's good. The Shroudbreaker Totem is one of the many artifacts and pieces of ancient remains that were left behind by these ancient peoples. And this one in particular, they're all full of curses and magic and very interesting lore. But this one, the Shroudbreaker, is said to have the ability to part the Devil's Shroud and let you sail safely through it, which is how we supposedly are going to make it to the Shores of Gold. We're going to follow in the Pirate Lord's footsteps on a journey he once took to find the Shroudbreaker, but he failed. And that is the first chapter of our journey, which is using a log or a journal from the Pirate Lord on the adventure he once took to find the Shroudbreaker totem.
It should be pointed out, too, that the Shroudbreaker, this big, MacGuffin, this 9-chapter story campaign kind of builds up to, it's essentially, it's made of the same stuff that Captain Morrow used to break the shroud in the Forsaken Shore story. There's this like material that can break the shroud. And when we talk about islands that exist within the shroud, there is one island alluded to in the Sea of Thieves opening that has resonance for Kongversation listeners, and that's Treasure Trove Cove, Jeff. Treasure Trove Cove is on the map at the beginning of Sea of Thieves, but it's not accessible within the game itself. So we're left with the implication that Treasure Trove Cove is currently in the Devil's Shroud, which would mean Treasure Trove Cove is an island in the Sea of Thieves, which would mean potentially that all of the worlds within Banjo-Kazooie and Grunny's Revenge are within the same realm as the Sea of Thieves, which would mean this material, Jeff, this material that the Shroudbreaker is comprised of, is the same material that jiggies are made out of.
Right. So because in Banjo-Kazooie, you access those worlds by collecting jiggies so that you can travel to there. So they have the exact same magic that the Shroudbreaker has.
Yes.
I mean, this is solid fan wank here. I mean, that's good fan, and I think that anyone who doesn't believe that is a certified moron, and they don't, they're wrong. What I also love about this is that it calls back to the Forsaken Shores campaign, where Captain Grace Morrow was a pirate who helmed a ship titled the Shroudbreaker, and that ship had a figurehead that was infused with the same, gemstone power that the Shroudbreaker has, that jiggies canonically now are made out of. You and I have declared.
Well, they're glowing. They glow the same way.
They glow. There you go, everyone. They glow, so it's obvious. But that captain had a ship that could part the shroud, and she would sail around exploring islands that are in the shroud, and until one day, she was betrayed. There's some stuff going on. That all we've talked at detail about back in our Forsaken Shores episode last year, which you can probably listen to on listening.com or whatever. And
damn it, Jeff. Now I'm going to have to apply for listening.com.
That's my favorite thing to do, is to make up URLs on the Kongversation. I love that they've called back to that element of the lore, and that it is a central part of this whole saga. So chapter 1, you go on this adventure, and you do it culminates with getting the Shroudbreaker totem. However, as it always seems to be the case when you find like a missing wallet or whatever, there's no money inside. The Shroudbreaker totem is missing all of its magic gemstones.
Yeah, so basically, you have the Thanos gauntlet, but you don't have the Infinity Stones in there. So it's like, we got to go find the Infinity Stones. Where are they? And then Paul Rudd shows up, and he's like, I've got an idea. Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers for Tall Tales. Paul Rudd shows up,
yeah,
and he's magnificent. So
he's as immortal as Royston and Captain Blackeye.
That first chapter is, in my opinion, it's amazing. It's one of the best chapters of the whole saga, because it's all of the things you're doing in it are brand new to you at that time. You've never done these kind of puzzles in Sea of Thieves. You've never had these kind of mechanics. So you're given a quest book, which is in your inventory. You open this book and you can turn the pages, and it is literally a journal that was written by the Pirate Lord. But within its pages are clues on where you need to go to retrace his steps and find some things he left behind that will push you along on your journey. And that alone is kind of exciting to do. You like, looking through this journal is a new mechanic, a new type of thing to do. But along the way, you're solving interesting puzzles. You encounter hidden rooms inside of islands that we have been to 1,000 times. You've been to this island 1,000 times since the game came out, but now that you've got this magic totem, or this little artifacts that you encounter that are keys to open hidden walls, and this giant stone slab on the wall moves out of the way and reveals a hidden passage that we've never been to before. And that's so exciting in Sea of Thieves, seeing these locations you've been to 100 times in these new ways, these hidden passages and these ancient puzzle rooms. And I think that first chapter really does an amazing job of introducing Tall Tales and saying, look at what we can do with story mode in Sea of Thieves. Look at the new kind of stuff you can do. And like I said before, you're still doing this in the shared world with other players around, with megalodons and krakens and skeletons and any kind of encounter that you might come across to make it unique to you and your friends that you go on this journey with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was honestly a little intimidating at first. I remember that first chapter playing it with you guys and being a little overwhelmed by how different everything felt. So it took me a while to get into the groove of it, especially the puzzle solving, because we were streaming all of this. So I feel like when I stream, it's hard to really absorb myself into the game that much, because I also have to entertain for the crowd that turns up. So I have to be basically an idiot man, juggling his balls in the air. And so it's kind of hard to like focus and Sherlock my surroundings. So that was a steep learning curve. But once I got into the groove of it, which I think was the second chapter, I really started having some fun.
Yeah, and our second chapter is the first one that we streamed where Chris Alcock, the author of the Sea of Thieves Athena's Fortune novel, and one of the writers on the whole Tall Tales campaign, he stepped into our live stream chat and offered all this great behind the scenes sort of perspective, and that was amazing. Not just on chapter 2, but on several of the chapters.
Let's be honest, he was mostly there to heckle us.
Well, he's a funny guy, so it's worth it.
This is why you need to show up for our streams, people, because you never know who's going to show up. Paul Rudd might show up and say we got to time travel. You don't know. I don't know. Any given week we do these, all manner of celebrities pop in. It's basically a who's who of Hollywood elite.
Yeah, every once in a while you get a guy pop in there and just says, "Hey, do you have an open spot in your crew?" And we say no, and then he just disappears. That was Paul Rudd.
Yeah, right, exactly. We disappoint Paul Rudd so many times. I feel bad for him. But I feel like the disappointment is keeping him young. So he's 50.
He doesn't look it. So the second chapter, if that first chapter was this grand sort of adventurous introduction to the whole saga, giving us a little taste of the puzzles in the adventure element, the second chapter is a lot less puzzly, a lot more action oriented, and that was titled "The Cursed Rogue," and it was centered around. Well, so the plot at this point is that we retrieve the Shroudbreaker, but it's missing its magic stones, and the mysterious stranger George tells us that Captain Briggsy is a pirate who once allegedly made it to the shores of gold. She might know something about these stones. Unfortunately, she's been turned into a skeleton lord, and Captain.
Isn't that always the way?
That's just how that goes. Captain Briggsy was a character in the Athena's Fortune novel, but at that point, she was not a skeleton lord. So this is a little bit of lore. This is some story building here. She has since turned into a skeleton lord, and that is the process of, for anyone who doesn't know, a pirate touches some kind of cursed artifact and is overtaken by a curse that gradually turns him into a skeleton. They still have their conscious brain. They're not like completely feral like the skeletons you encounter in the game regularly, but their personality has been twisted and they've become very greedy and sort of evil. And so it's a really sad thing for Briggsy to become that.
It is. It's like when, you're in the 1950s and you're listening to an Elvis Presley album and you're like, I want to know more about this character, this Elvis. And then you eventually get to 1977 and you're like, what happened to Elvis? And he's this obese man eating peanut butter and Quaalude sandwiches on a toilet. And you're like, oh, that's a plot twist I didn't see coming. That's exactly what it is with Briggsy.
Yeah, so he tells you, well, you might find out something from Briggsy about these missing stones, but she's a skeleton lord, so you probably just have to kill her. And we're like, okay. And then we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like killing pigs, but I'll kill Briggsy, sure. So, Briggsy is very memorable character design too. I think out of all the skeleton lords outside of like the big ones that they've been promoting for years, like the Gold Hoarder or Flameheart, I think Briggsy is really the one that sticks in the mind the most because they just stuck a plague mask on a skeleton, and it's beautiful.
More of it's kind of a plague mask, but they describe it as a masquerade mask. It does have the beak on it like a plague mask, but I think it's meant to be more of something you might wear to a masquerade. She's a very flamboyant, a very outgoing personality pirate with a boisterous personality, and yeah, she's freaking awesome. So, but now she's a skeleton, so she's gonna have to die.
Well, she didn't ask to be cursed, Jeff. I don't think it's fair to really say she.
Fair enough.
That's a joke that people might not get because I was referencing the thing from the thing.
You know what's really great about jokes that people might not get is
what's that, Jeff?
If you don't tell people that it is a joke, they won't know that they even missed it. But since you did, now they do, and we're talking about it.
It's a reference to an oft-repeated line of dialogue that you'll probably hear 40 times as she kills you again and again and again. And so these tall tales, every so often they're punctuated by these big, massive boss battles that with these skeleton lords that usually revolve around the skeleton lord sending minions at you and then creating a shockwave that knocks you about half a mile back and killing you. And then this crew starts squabbling at each other about having no strategy to do this and how we're never going to defeat this skeleton unless we come up with a strategy. And then we just happen to stumble upon their death, and we're like, "Oh,
but
okay,
it took us 45 minutes."
Right, right.
But leading up to this fight was really, honestly, I think really great lore, really exciting for me. Is that the quest book for this chapter? Every chapter has its own quest book that you're thumbing through the pages of, and this quest book is an instruction manual written by the Order of Souls on how to interpret the memories of skeletons. So the Order of Souls is a company that if you kill a skeleton captain on a bounty, you can take their skull and you can sell it to the Order of Souls and they give you money. The question is why? What do they do with those skulls? Well, they use a little bit of magic and a little bit of vape power, and they can pull the memories out of that skull, and then they write them down, and then they use those memories to figure out where those skeletons buried all their hidden treasure, and they use that for the Gold Hoarder company makes the X marks the spot maps out of those memories so that you can go dig up treasure. So it's this sort of kind of ecosystem, this I scratch your back, you scratch mine sort of economy of how those companies work. And in this chapter, we get to read the memories of some skeletons and interpret those memories to figure out where they are guarding a chest and a key, so we can open a chest and find some special artifacts that will help us track down Captain Briggsy. And I loved that part of the story, seeing the memories of the skeletons, getting the dialogue of the skeletons and kind of their thought process, seeing the skeletons talk about their opinions on humans, who they call fleshies. Sort of like we call them skellies, they call us fleshies. It's all really good lore to me. I love that part of it.
Well, and a lot of this lore was already established, especially in the ancillary expanded universe materials, but have it all then reincorporated into the game itself. I love how consistent the world building is with all of the Sea of Thieves branded stuff. And that, they're able to just effortlessly put it back into the main game. Obviously having people like Alcock help write Tall Tales helps with that, but Adam Park, Pete Hentz, everybody who's involved with this aspect of Sea of Thieves, they do make sure it's all consistent. They have this massive timeline, for all these events that have happened in Sea of Thieves, some of which we're not even privy to. and they're making sure it all adds up and all flows into each other. So it's really appreciated, I think, especially by the hardcore DK liners who play the game, because this is all stuff we're cognizant of already, and it's the kind of stuff we would always, again, fill in the blanks ourselves, but we don't really have to now because they're doing that work for us.
So obviously that leads up to this big fight with the big skeleton. You defeat Captain Briggsy. It's just, which if you've read the novel and you're aware of Captain Briggsy, it is kind of I think a striking thing to now be doing battle with this character that used to be a good guy, and they're a skeleton. But anyway, you defeat them, you take the skull, and you bring that back to the Order of Souls, and then they interpret the memories of Captain Briggsy so that they can point you in the direction to figure out what the heck did she do with all of them magic stones from the Shroudbreaker. And at this point, the Tall Tales really opens up, because they now say, well, here are 4 different names of people that Briggsy encountered in her life that were tied to, recent memories of hers. And at this point, you can go do any of the next 4 chapters in any order you want. Which is really great design, too, because especially if a lot of players are trying to do Tall Tales all at once, it kind of opens that up so not all players are doing the same thing at the same time on a server. Anyway, but also from a storytelling perspective, it's very cool.
Yeah, although if you're like me, you'll just play them in the order that it's listed on the menu, because your brain will refuse to accept any other alternative.
And I think it is the best way to do it is in consecutive order, especially because the 3rd chapter also, in my opinion, really does well to follow up the 2nd chapter. 3rd chapter is called The Legendary Storyteller, and this is, so immediately after you've killed Captain Briggsy and sold off her skull, you visit a woman who, when she was a child, Briggsy was her childhood hero and this character she looked up to, and she wrote this quest book, which is our quest book that we're going to use, is just a collection of drawings from a child that when she was like 4, I think she was 4 years old, something like that. And oh my God, this quest book is incredible. So go ahead and describe it.
I actually squeed. I actually made that noise while we were streaming, and I opened this. It was this involuntary response because it was the most adorable thing. Just a child's rendition of essentially Sea of Thieves, crayon drawings, and it's just so perfect.
Yeah, and you're taking these drawings that depict an adventure. Like it's just childhood drawings. Say Briggsy went here and did this, and there was a battle. And she lost the chest. Oh no, and stuff like that. And it's very full of childlike wonder and excitement. But then you interpret that drawing because it's a real event that took place, and you can follow in that path and figure out where to go to find her hidden, artifacts and such. And so there's a puzzle in there, and interpreting the childlike drawings to figure out what they're meant to represent in the real Sea of Thieves is just so much fun. It's great.
Yeah, and it should also be pointing out that the character who drew these as a child is Tasha, who runs one of the taverns in the game and has from the beginning, I believe. So I just like that they take these NPCs who, I remember when the game came out, people complained all these NPCs running the shops were just bland and without personality, which I didn't feel was a fair criticism, because they were all slightly eccentric if you bothered to listen to their dialogue. They just weren't outrageously ridiculous like some rare characters. But we really I like when the game goes out of its way to just fill out the backstory for just this random character over here who's been here from the start, but they have this complete life story, and it's great. It really makes the world feel like a lived-in environment that even these NPC characters have had full life experiences that we aren't exactly privy to until at a certain point in the game's timeline. And
Yeah. Well, and I should probably point out, when we were out at E3, I ran into, I was lucky enough to run into the artist from Rare who drew the actual child drawings. They're not really drawn by a child, but it's an artist named Ina or Ine. It's a name that I'm gonna butcher, so I won't even try the last name. But she's a concept artist at Rare. Was out at E3, and I just met her at E3 and just gushed over this amazing quest book that they put together, and it's so well done. And the whole story of that chapter is that Tasha is kind of jaded and has lost the sense of wonder and thinks that all the stories were just made up, and that the real adventures didn't happen, and that Briggsy was just a liar and a fool. And you go through and you follow in her story's footsteps, and you find the real treasure, and you show it to her, and it prove that all her childhood dreams actually were based on real events, and it sort of reignites her sense of wonder and adventure. And that's just a really awesome little detour on the story here that doesn't really serve the overall goal of reaching the shores of gold, but it's just a self-contained little story that has an awesome sort of lesson in it, and
yeah, it's the same lesson of Supertramp's The Logical Song.
Yeah, they should have really tried to get that in there.
They should have. Yeah, they why didn't they have that in a soundtrack? I mean, Robin Beanland can take a day off, Rare.
Well, now that he's got the award, the Ivor Novello, I imagine he's going to have a hard time keeping him on. He's probably going to be the new frontman for Supertramp, so they should try to license old Supertramp music. It'll be cheaper than he is.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, let's move on to Stars of a Thief, which is the Constellation one. I think is how most people know of it, and that introduces the character of Suds McKenzie, the beloved beer mascot. No, I'm lying. It's Suds, the star-loving man who runs one of the Sea Post.
Yeah, and Suds was a confidant or associate of Briggsy in her life, and he's just this weirdo, just this weird man that's obsessed with the stars. I love him. I love his voice acting. I love his personality. I feel like he would fit right in something like Ghoulies. Just this weird old man, just going on and on about the stars and the alignment of the heavens. I don't know. He's a weirdo. But he's great.
I mean, most of the weirdos in Ghoulies were just making up euphemisms for their penis. So I think Suds has a little bit more class than that.
No, fair enough.
But
he's still weird, and I still love him.
He is.
So he leads you on a quest to discover an enchanted spyglass that allows you to look at the stars and magically see constellations appear in them, like physically drawn lines in the sky, which is really cool. A really cool effect they did, and then they built these really great kind of cerebral puzzles around that. I would say this is the most cerebral of the Nine Tails, the most puzzly, and it's one of my favorites for that reason.
See, you keep saying it's cerebral, and I keep thinking it reminded me of the Nelvana logo, the cartoon studio from Canada. The end of their shows in the 90s, they would have that polar bear constellation that would appear, right?
So everything you said did not ring any bells until you said polar bear constellation, and now I'm like, yes, I'm aware of that vaguely.
Actually, I think I'm marrying it with the Deke logo. I'm combining the two in my head, but still, it reminded me of the Nelvana logo. It's also important here that it is established in Sea of Thieves lore that Sea of Thieves being a realm unto itself, the stars are different, and that's been established since the start. I believe it was in the Tales book where it was really pointed out that the stars didn't match any star charts. And from there, yeah, we've got unique constellations that don't exist in reality, but they exist on a Sea of Thieves. And that's important because they came up with different constellations that are thematically appropriate for the Sea of Thieves, but all, with unique names then. And I guess the main point to hit on for the Kongversation crowd is how this ties into Donkey Kong lore. This is a surprise that I don't think many people saw coming, but there is a fish constellation, Jeff, and it's not an anglerfish, it's just a fish, but it is called the Glimmer
That's just because constellations have to conserve detail. They're just a few stars.
It's the Glimmer constellation because it is a fish that glimmers. But we got confirmation from Alcock that he didn't come up with the idea of a fish constellation, but he got to name it. And yeah, that was the intention.
So this is a fish from Donkey Kong Country 2. Clearly, it's the same fish. Like, they're named after the same fish. So
okay, no. The implication here, Jeff, is that there was the Glimmer constellation first.
Well, yeah,
right?
because stars have been around. Sea of Thieves takes place well in the past.
This is the golden age of piracy. This is a well-known constellation among hardcore seafarers who have been to the Sea of Thieves or at least know of the legends of the Sea of Thieves. And ergo, the Rare Archipelago being such well-versed in sea lore, having seen many pirates sail its waters throughout the years, many coming from the Sea of Thieves, then the Kongs, if they're naming an animal buddy that was a fish that illuminated things in dark places, well, they would probably call it Glimmer, and that explains that. It is a delightfully convoluted retcon of something that never needed retconning, of something that is a game that is owned by another corporate entity, but Chris Alcock's going to throw that in there for us. I love it, and I appreciate it so much.
If they're going to reference any animal buddy, of course it's going to be Glimmer, the anglerfish from that one level of Donkey Kong Country 2.
From that one level of Donkey Kong Country 2, but don't forget, also on the Donkey Kong Land 2 box art erroneously. So, Glimmer's gotten around in his day. Wasn't in Donkey Kong Land 2.
Well, okay, but also, they did name that level after him, Glimmer's Galleon, which implies that the whole sunken ship belongs to Glimmer.
Well, he kind of moved in after it sunk.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
of course. But that's
he's a shifty freeloader, squatting rights and all that. But yeah, no, Glimmer is named after this fish star chunk in the sky from the ocean days.
Yeah, from back in the ocean days. Yeah, which is so good.
Yeah,
I didn't think we'd get a Glimmer reference in 2019, but here we are.
I didn't think we'd get a Glimmer reference in 2019. Well, honestly, 2019 and 2018 have been so weird and so giving to us as fans of all of this that, honestly, at this point, I'm expecting 10 more Glimmer references by the end of the year. Really, anything's on the table at this point. We had the fucking Donkey Kong Universe reference and an E3 trailer during the Nintendo Direct. So, at this point, I will be just shocked and outraged if we don't get more Glimmer references by December.
Real quick, I just had a brain blast, and what the heck? Oh, the page link is broken. Oh no, let's see. I don't know. I wrote an article on DK Vine once 100 years ago that was titled "An Optimistic Look Forward," and it was 13 possible games that could be in the works and things that we had to look forward to, and it at the end it says something about 13 glimmers of hope or glimmers of light, and then I photoshopped a little picture of 13 pictures of Glimmer shining in the sky, and this was in like 2013, so I kind of predicted Glimmer as a constellation all the way back then. Unless I'm misremembering.
I'm sure Alcock was inspired by you, Jeff.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the main takeaway from Stars of a Thief. I mean, it was great fun, but also glimmer. So, moving forward to Wild Rose, excuse me, Wild Rose. I was getting ahead of myself there. Wild Rose is actually my favorite, Jeff. I mean, the Shores of Gold was probably my favorite, but
Right, but that one's
we're
cheating.
discounting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
We
cheating.
don't pick that one.
Because that's the big slam bang, thank you, ma'am, kind of.
But we're not going to spoil that till we
grad-
talk about it later. So if anyone has
Yeah,
not
yeah.
played it yet, they can still hear this part.
That was the orgasmic climax of all of this. But I think Wild Rose is the one that resonated the most with me, just because I'm apparently a sap, and I love the doomed tragic romance love story aspect of it. It brought me to a puddle-like state on my floor as I was playing the game.
Yeah, so Wild Rose was the first tall tale that they actually prototyped and came up with conceptually. Even before there was even the idea that all their tall tales would be sequenced into a linear story. At that point, early on, each chapter was meant to be a standalone story, and as a result, Wild Rose is pretty self-contained. It has really had nothing to do with the overall arc, other than the fact that the characters of Rose and George were members of Briggsy's crew. And they do kind of tie it into a later chapter we'll talk about when we get to it. But it's one of my favorites because of the fact that it tells a really self-contained story. And the story is centered around the concept of love, because back then, early on, they thought each chapter they did would be focused on a singular emotion, and this was called The Tale of Love. And the legendary storyteller one was called The Tale of Wonder, etc. So anyway, yeah, this one's amazing. It's also the fact that it was the first one that they made. It was the first one that we tested in insider testing. So it's the first one that I've ever played because I tested it. And so I hold it in really high regard for being my first taste of any of these tall tale concepts from the lore book and the puzzle solving. But in general, I think this is a really great taste of a wide variety of concepts. Good puzzles, a bit of action, great storytelling and dialogue and special effects. I think it has a taste of everything, and this is really your quintessential tall tale.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's the one that made me scream at the TV at Alcock. By the way, Alcock was watching at this time, and I cursed him out when I realized that it was a doomed love story. So it brought out a wide range of emotions in me. It ultimately had a happy, if not bittersweet, ending, and it also tied into the lore of death and rebirth in the game, and how it got around that was very clever, because in Sea of Thieves, you die, you go to the Ferry of the Damned, you go back through the portal, you come back. So whenever they need to have more emotional resonance than just constant rebirth in an identical physical form, they've got to get creative. So here they had to get creative with extra skeleton curses to keep these characters from coming back, or their souls are trapped in this thing, and then they move on beyond the realm of where the ferryman can reach them. Stuff like that is just, again, very well thought out, and it makes you appreciate the details all the more.
And on the subject, this quest book is also really great because, like I said, every chapter has a different quest book with a different sort of context for why you are looking at it and what information it holds. And this one is like a lover's journal documenting their relationship, sort of a memento, because the two characters, Rose and George, are meant to be married. And so this book is like a scrapbook containing some of their memories of how they met. Here's an excerpt from Rose's diary, here's an excerpt from George's diary. Here is a moment they shared together, and this and that. And all of this was meant to be a gift to them on their wedding day before they went missing. And so it's this really emotionally resonant book, but also yet another clever way to use a real world book with a real in-lore significance and cleverly use it as a vehicle to convey puzzles.
I would say the book was almost as emotionally resonant as the scrapbook with all of your DK Vine stickers in it.
Oh, yeah, that's really good. It also has all my movie ticket stubs, so you could see how I saw Ice Age, how I saw Ice Age 2, The Meltdown, or maybe the time I saw Ice Age 3, Dawn of the Dinosaurs, other great movies, like Ice Age 4, Continental Drift, or how about that time I saw Ice Age 5, Collision Course? Yeah, really great scrapbook that is.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I'm not even going to comment.
I'm a well-documented fan of the Ice Age film franchise, and I won't hear it.
No, you're not going to hear from me, because you know what, Jeff? I'm all about self-acceptance, and I feel like you should embrace that side of you. I fully expect a complimentary blog to Golden Sands about the Ice Age movies.
Frozen Sands blog post. So I think we probably said all we can about Wild Rose, other than, the puzzles are really good. It's got some action and then a really sad fucking story. Really well-rounded story in general.
Yeah, you said sad fucking story, but in our show notes, but there was a line break, so all I saw in the points to hit was sad fucking. And I was trying to think back to the story, and I was like, I don't remember much sad fucking in the story.
Well, it's one of the puzzles to open one of those walls in the rock, but you don't have a totem, so there's just this hole in the rock. You get that would be some sad fucking tears. It's David the Robin Beanland soundtrack, really really sad music going on top of it, and you're just like, oh.
That one in the Ivor novella.
That's how we want it, yeah. So chapter 6 was Art of the Trickster.
Art of the Trickster. Yeah, so Art of the Trickster. This is trailer highlights. This is the one that really scratches that Indiana Jones itch that I think a lot of Rare fans always have, especially the ones who started with the Donkey Kong Country trilogy. Yeah, it's basically you're going through caves and tombs full of booby traps. And the trickster is a character who made traps. And
you know what? I wrote in the show notes the trickster, but their actual canonical name is the trap maker.
Oh, excuse me.
I did that wrong, and I just caught it. So yeah, the trap maker. Yeah. Even though the title of the chapter is The Art of the Trickster, the character is referred to as the trap maker.
Honestly, both Trickster and Trapmaker would make very suitable D-list Batman villain names. I'm
not entirely convinced that either of those aren't already in the Batman lore.
Actually, the Trickster might be a villain, or maybe he's like a Superman villain. I'm going to look this up while you keep talking.
Yeah, so what I love about this one is that so every tale begins with an NPC, and this tale begins with the best NPC, which is Salty the Parrot.
Excuse me. I was wrong. The Trickster is a Flash villain.
Oh,
what the
well,
fuck is wrong
of course
with
he is.
me?
He was played by Mark Hamill. I forgot.
Yeah.
I feel like such a fool. So Salty the Parrot is my favorite NPC in all of Sea of Thieves lore, and he's a man that was cursed to turn into a skeleton parrot, and he just has these quips about being a parrot, and he's great. He's really great.
And actually, that was the first Donkey Kong Animal Buddy reference in Sea of Thieves, because they made a Squawks joke with him.
They did. That's right. I forgot about that. And speaking of parrots, this anniversary update added in the parrot cosmetic set, which is a really great, you can wear for your pirate and also your ship, and it puts a parrot figurehead on the front of your ship. It's all very, very DKC, very cool. And Salty the Parrot kind of sets you off on this journey with a book of personal notes from the Trapmaker, who was kidnapped by Briggsy in some way that is Salty's fault. He may have like sold her out in some manner. Because Salty is such a like dirtbag. Like he's such a really underhanded character.
Thing is, so Salty was present in the closed beta, right? So Salty seemed like such a nice man there. And slowly he's become such a piece of shit. And he became even shittier when he became an undead parrot. Which is a weird sentence to even have come out of my mouth. But Salty is just crap. Like, and I love it. He's like, he is a character you absolutely love to observe. Like, he is just so good at being so corrupted.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing. This is a world of pirates, and you would expect more characters to be kind of underhanded. But in Sea of Thieves, many characters seem to be, like, pretty clearly good guys or clearly bad guys a lot of times. And Salty is that guy who's just like, yeah, this is like a dirtbag pirate, but he also doesn't really have an agenda other than self-serving. He's just kind of going through the motion, like going through his life from one crazy situation to the next, serving his own needs best he can, but like getting into crazy shenanigans. And that is what you'd expect from your average pirate. Like they're not serving some bigger lord or you know, honor or anything.
It's bizarre that probably the most historically accurate depiction of piracy in Sea of Thieves is the character who was cursed to become a parrot skeleton.
So you've got this book of Trapmaker puzzles, and in this whole chapter, you go through some of my favorite puzzles. There's a puzzle cave that has you sort of manipulating these remains, these skeletons that are lying about the floor, and you manipulate them by moving their arms around and stuff until you've got them all lined up with, you know, what the puzzle tells you to do. And then a cage descends from the ceiling, and you get a magic, not a magic, but you get a sort of special spyglass that has some decals on it and a crack.
Yes, it's a dirty spyglass.
It's a dirty spyglass with what appears to be the shape of a skull in it when you look through the glass, with a big crack of an X in where his mouth is. And what you do with that is you look through the spyglass when you're standing in a specific spot, and then you look at a specific spot, and the X in the crack is the X marks the spot on where you need to dig in the world. So you're standing on a mountain ledge, and it's like you have to solve a puzzle to figure out where to stand, and then you solve a puzzle to figure out where from that location to look and line up the image perfectly. And when you look through the spyglass, you see this X on the ground, and that is where you need to dig. And it's such a little fun puzzle, and that's only the beginning, because this is a doozy. This puzzle, or this chapter, goes on and on. Not a bad way, but it has a lot of parts to it.
The exploding island freaked me out.
Yeah, so you figure out the final part of this spyglass segment. You do a spyglass segment, you go and dig the X, and all it does is give you another clue for the next spot to dig. So you do the same puzzle again with like a different puzzle, different location, and you do that 4 times, and at the 4th location, you dig up the Trapmaker's key, which is a armored explosive barrel. It's not that armored. And in that moment, the entire island is rigged to detonate with a sequence of explosions. And you need to get that key back to your boat without letting it explode. And we kind of fucked it up.
We did. Now, Grant, at the time, it was far easier to go explodey with the island. They've kind of nerfed it a bit.
Yeah, they've balanced it in a patch for sure to make that a little more doable. But yeah, we were like, grab this exploding barrel, and all of a sudden you just hear booms going off everywhere, and you turn around and look, and the ravine is just going up in flames, and you're just like, holy the whole ground is shaking. and you just try to get that barrel to the water so you can swim with it because the explosions can't hurt you in the water, right? But you blow up before you can even get there because you hesitated. And when I say you, I mean me. I think I was the one who blew it up the first time, but I don't remember actually. But anyway, we had to repeat the whole quest because we failed at this point. And this is where the quest gets interesting because this item that can explode is a key that we need at the next part of the quest. And so we have to sail with this item and get it to this location without letting it get destroyed. Now, we have a key that is destructible. That is a unique concept for this quest. But where it gets really interesting is that the part where you need to plug the key into is down in a cave system, down in these catacombs of that is just hallways and hallways filled with booby traps. And you can't let this thing explode. You can't like get hit by these booby traps, which is just so stressful, but really like exciting and intense. And we did make it through the second time. But this is that moment where you really get that kind of platformery feel of going through, timing your movement and like, okay, wait for the thing to roll or wait for the spikes to recede and then run, and then the spikes come and they get you because you hesitate.
And honestly, I've been comparing a lot of this to Donkey Kong Country, the original Rare trilogy, but the over-the-top spectacle in this chapter really brings to mind the retro Donkey Kong Country games, which were, basically those like huge set pieces in like the last quarter of a stage where everything is just crumbling or exploding or just getting absurd. That's kind of what this felt like at times. Very, very physically exhausting, just as Wild Rose was emotionally exhausting.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's where other like the Spyglass one, the Stars of a Thief. That one is all mental, like brain solving. And Wild Rose is very emotionally taxing. And this one actually takes physical skill and timing and sort of dexterity in your button presses to get through these puzzles, or not puzzles, these traps. And you get to the bottom, you plug the key in, and what do you do now? Now you have waves and waves of skeletons attacking, and you got to make sure they don't like blow up the keg. So you're kind of playing defend the point for a minute there. And it's just one thing after another.
It's one of the first times in a long time that my hands have sweated while holding a controller. Like, I don't get that response much anymore when I play video games, but I definitely did here. Just that kind of adrenaline-filled, joyful terror that one gets when things get really intense in a game. That really came into play here.
Yeah, and this is one of those tales. Obviously, every tale can be done solo. We've really hyped up how great these are to do with your friends. They can be done solo, but this is one that I really felt was so much more fun with friends because the hilarity of getting impaled on spikes is a lot less frustrating when you're all a group of friends all trying to make it through and like watching each other die and kind of laughing it off versus playing alone. You don't laugh things off as easy. Things become frustrating because only one of you really needs to make it through sometimes. And, anyway, it was a lot of fun. It's probably one of the more fun chapters just in terms of mechanical fun that you're doing in the game outside of like the puzzle solving and some of the other stuff. I think mechanically this was one of the most fun Tall Tales you could have.
Yeah, I mean, I think the final chapter outdid it, but this definitely set the stage for that. So,
right, yeah, it's kind of establishes a system of how their traps can work, and they can use these trap ideas in future chapters and future releases, where you've got things that can trigger things, like stepping on a platform or pressing a lever. Those are triggers. And then you've got things that are the responses to triggers, like swinging blades or spikes that come out of the ground or rotating blades that come out of the ground, all these different types of traps. And now all that groundwork is there. Oh, and I think there were like even big logs covered in spikes that come swinging left and right, that kind of thing. So all the kind of classic Indiana Jones style temple like traps that you could expect. They've laid the groundwork there, which is great. And then we get into Fate of the Morning Star, which is chapter 7.
Speaking as a vegetarian, usually Fate of the Morning Star is I forget I bought those chicken nuggets and they've been sitting in my freezer for months and I'm desperate because I haven't bought food in a while and I go to get them out and they're covered in like the freezer crust and I'm just like, oh, forget this. That's the Fate of the Morning Star in my house.
That's a good joke. That's really good. But Fate of the Morning Star is where the story comes back into being linear. So chapter 3, 4, 5, and 6, you can do in any order because you're just out kind of exploring the memories that Briggsy left behind of some characters. And Fate of the Morning Star is where you kind of have an outside influence interrupt your journey here. Where before you're just exploring some characters that Briggsy ran into. Now the ferryman gets a hold of you and he says, hey, I know you're on this journey, but I heard that you had rescued some souls and helped them pass on. That was the Wild Rose chapter. And he kind of sets you on a quest for him that also ties into your journey. And it is the Morning Star crew who at one point tried to reach the Shores of Gold. They all got attacked by a skeleton lord named Greymarrow, and he has trapped their souls, and the ferryman can't reach them. And so the ferryman wants you to help those souls, and he gives you a journal of his own thoughts, which is really exciting. This is the first time you really get a lot of characterization and backstory out of the ferryman.
Yeah, because up until this point, the ferryman is just a slightly grouchy captain of the Ferry of the Damned, who, eventually they added the ability to talk to him and converse with him, but you still don't really have a backstory to him. And here we get to see precisely how he died and a little bit of his life while he was just a regular living man before he, died and aligned with the Pirate Lord to allow this system of constant reincarnation in the Sea of Thieves. Yeah,
so what's really great there is you dig up his grave, which is so morbid and awesome. And like you follow this X marks the spot, or not X marks the spot, but you follow this clue that he writes about where he died, and you sink a shovel into dirt, and you start digging, and you realize you're not digging up a chest, you're digging up a coffin or a sarcophagus. And then you pop it open, and there is a skeleton that looks just like the ferryman, and you pull from his clutches a magic enchanted lantern. And this lantern, when you shine it on the environment, it gives you a peek into, I guess you would call them sort of memories of the spirit world, sort of memories that spirits have cast onto the environment that reenact past events.
So, like, in the lore of, like, real world, like, ghost hunting, this is kind of like what you would refer to. I don't remember the exact terminology, but like there are hauntings, but then there are just the hauntings that aren't actually intelligent hauntings. They're just
imprints, right? Like, they're imprinted.
Imprints, like spiritual energy, if not the spirits themselves, of just a spirit doing, like, repeating the same action from their life again and again and again. That's what these are.
Right. And so you can use this lantern to, you go to a location, and then with the lantern, you see scenes play out of these pirates being attacked by Captain Greymarrow, an evil skeleton lord, and they run off into the island, and you follow their footprints. And it's this really great mechanic of shine the light on the ground, and you can see where the footprints are, and you follow in their path, and it kind of leads to some puzzles. Overall, it's a very straightforward one. There's not a lot of difficulty in it. There's not really a lot of puzzle solving in it. But just the mechanic alone of following in ghost footprints and seeing these scenes play out in spirit form is just really cool. And the story itself is kind of interesting too. And this is, so the Morningstar crew is also from the Athena's Fortune novel, and as is Grey Marrow. So we're getting a lot of like sort of, here's some characters you've heard of if you read the novel, and now their circumstances are all wildly different, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I do have the question of how the ferryman prepared his own sarcophagus. That's not something people typically do, especially when they commit suicide.
That's a great question. We have to ask him.
He drank poison. So, I mean, I guess it makes more sense that he did kill himself by drinking the poison. Although he was like, he drank the poison because he was dying already, right? So, I'm trying to think.
Something to do with
logically.
He was dying, or maybe he was cursed or something, so then he'd take the poison. And anyway, if you shine up your lantern, you can see his ghost form, like laying near a rock near the sarcophagus, drinking the poison. But I don't remember if he dies there and then maybe somebody like goes and buries him after they find him. Like they just find him and they're okay, let's bury him. Did he leave
specific instructions like, hey, if you find my body, please put it in this fancy sarcophagus. I've personally whittled myself. Like I don't know.
Maybe if he is a friend of the Pirate Lord's, maybe the Pirate Lord found him and was like, oh, he deserves a proper burial. We're gonna make him this nice sarcophagus and bury him 5 feet from where he died.
Yeah, I fully expect this to be fleshed out in some future project, whether it be part of a novel, a comic, or just a future tall tale. But I want some further explanation. Who buried the ferryman? Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a really great tale. The story's simple. Captain Slate was from the novel, and he's kind of a badass. He's like the only one of his crew that stands up to Grey Marrow, but he ultimately perishes. And he's got a figurehead on the Morningstar figurehead is a bear, and I feel like Eli Slate, the captain, he himself is kind of like embodies a bear, sort of a very gruff and badass pirate, but a good guy. Like in the novel, they kind of pitch him as I would say a respectable type of pirate. But anyway, it is kind of sad to see his crew die and then become cursed. But then you go on this journey to release their spirits so that they are no longer cursed and bound.
One member of his crew did not die, and it actually serves as a really bonkers retcon of an existing NPC in the game.
Oh, yeah, this is great. So, Chapter 8, Revenge of the Morningstar, continues the story of the Morningstar. So this is why they've gone back into a linear... Like, they opened up the stories, you could do them in any order, and now they're back to a linear, and I think that it's a good thing they did this, because these really kind of escalate each one in terms of intensity until you get to the final chapter. But you find a shipwright named Sandra. I think it was Sandra. And
something like that.
Sandra basically says, oh, the Morningstar crew, you're looking for those guys? Well, their shipwreck went down at this location, and I can give you sort of some notes on that, but you're not going to find anything good. And you go on this quest to basically get revenge on Grey Marrow for what he did to the Morningstar crew. And this, you actually really didn't like this chapter for a couple reasons, Hyle.
So this was my least favorite of the 9, and the main reason I didn't like it was because the chapter required your characters to change clothes, which I wouldn't have minded, but it also required you to change your hairstyle, which I do mind.
Yeah, so you get a chest full of these clothes that belong to the Morningstar crew, and then they're basically the puzzle. It's not really a puzzle. They just tell you, like, dress up like the Morningstar crew so that when you talk to the shipwright or you talk to the tavern girl, she's going to recognize you as a member of that crew and give you some intel. And in order to fit in, you've got to have not just your hairstyle, but your facial hair and your whole outfit.
Yes.
has to match this
Which,
thing.
while we were playing it, I was trying to justify how this was possible, how my pirate, who at most has just a little bit of scruff on his face at all times, would suddenly have this like elaborate, was it like a Van Dyke beard? It was like some sort
They're
of
very
like,
kind of haughty, like I don't know what you call it, like a the hair has got like curls around the sideburns, like it's very fancy man pirate. Not my pirate.
Fancy man, not my thing. I mean, I'm a beardless gentleman as is in real life, so this is beyond me. But where did this facial hair come from on my pirate? Did he just like squeeze it out like really hard? Like are these like prosthetics? Is this just like fake facial wigs that they applied with glue? Like, I was struggling with this because this broke some of the logic of my pirate and my Sea of Thieves world. It was one of the few times where I feel like the game was betraying like my desire to be the pirate I wanted to be, because it said, no, Hyle, your pirate has always had facial hair. And I said, don't tell me what my pirate has had, Sea of Thieves.
It's holograms. So I think that, yeah, aside from changing your hair and beard, the idea of putting on an outfit to trick somebody into giving you information is a neat little concept. I don't think it's really all that exciting when it actually happens. They maybe could have made it more of a interesting puzzle, but yeah.
I mean, it's a well-worn, no pun intended, trope of other games where your character has to put on the clothes of the enemy or to impersonate someone else. I mean,
Star Fox Adventures has that time you can turn into a sharp claw, but that's like a hologram.
That was a hologram, yeah. But it makes sense for Sea of Thieves to eventually get to that. I just wish they hadn't done the facial hair, and I also wish you would have been able to keep the clothes. Although in retrospect, I understand why you don't, because you have to replay the chapter, and part of that is acquiring the clothes. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't like this one.
Well, aside from that element, and I feel like also when we did this, you might have just been tired because you didn't seem to be really into any of it the whole time.
I was a grump.
You were a grumpy man that day. I think you should give it another chance someday, but I really like this chapter.
I will. 4 times over.
It's not my favorite chapter, but it's good. Once you are done getting the intel you need with the fancy clothes, you go to these locations and you get these messages that were written by skeletons in a secret skeleton hieroglyphic type of language, like glyph, a symbol language. And then you've got a decoder book that you can use to decode these messages. And I think it's kind of a fun little puzzle when you get this thing that's like, oh, this is the symbol for walk. This is the symbol for tree. This is the symbol for southeast. Then and you piece them together, and then you're like, oh, okay, so walk to the tree, then turn southeast, then walk 3 paces, and you kind of puzzle that out as you go. And I liked it. I think it's cool. But you also culminate in another Skeleton Lord fight, this time with Lord Greymarrow. And the way that you summon him is what is interesting here. Because with Briggsy, she was just out and about, and you had to go find her. And with Greymarrow, there's actually like a part of the plot is summoning him, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure I entirely grasp everything here about like summoning a skeleton lord and what the implications for that are. Like they can go into a state of hibernation, or
he's got, so you basically, and I don't quite get it either all the way, but you collect a skull that is, a particular skull, not just any skull. And then you collect a relic that was titled the Chalice of Resurrection. And you bring both of them to an altar, and this altar is adorned with the same kind of symbols that the skeleton language is. And when you put both of the items on the altar, the skeleton lord is brought back to life. And this kind of fits into a lot of the lore, because earlier in the story when we killed Briggsy and we brought her skull to Madame Olivia from the Order of Souls, she mentioned something along the lines of, or maybe this was the other skeleton lord that you fight. I don't remember. But one of them, when you sell the skull, they say something along the lines of, I think that this skeleton will be back on the seas again one day, or this won't stop them for long. Yeah. And of course, when we're doing bounty quests, we fight captains, and we often run into the same captain again after we've killed them in the past. So I think that once you become a skeleton, your physical form is kind of, it's temporary, but, if somebody kills you and takes your skull and they get your memories, the skeletons have a manner to bring those captains back through magic.
Well, this was always the implication, or at least in my head, because the amount of times, I fought Grog males or, Deadly Daily, and I'm just like, well, hold on, how are there multiple bounties for this skeleton, that we keep killing again and again and again? And it's because they have a way of coming back, just like we fleshies have a way of coming back. The skellies also have a way of coming back, and I think it's tied into this chalice of resurrection and everything. So yeah, that it is an important missing piece of the lore. It just wasn't entirely, no pun intended, fleshed out. So it'd be interesting to see where else they take this going forward.
Yeah, what I love about that and the Briggsy chapter is how they give us a look at the goings-on of skeletons. This is a book, we get some pages of the book that are written by Greymarrow giving orders to his skeletons, like, do this, go here, get this stone, we need to resurrect this character, blah, blah, blah. And then, when you get to fight the skeletons, you get some of their dialogue. They're talking about, oh, do what the captain says. Who are you to argue? And, Briggsy thinks there's a cure. That's one of Briggsy's character traits, is that she's trying to cure her skeletonness. And some of her lackeys are arguing over whether that's possible. And so I love getting this little glimpse into the life of the skeletons. They don't just wait around on the islands for a pirate to show up so they can swarm them. They are kind of being ordered around by these higher level lords and captains and going about on actual orchestrated agendas, which I love getting a glimpse of that.
Yeah, I said when Sea of Thieves launched that I think the Skellies quickly became one of my favorite enemy tribes, enemy clans. Right underneath the Kremlins, and that's been cemented by Tall Tales and just getting deeper glimpses into how Skelly society works. And it's like I said, it's all internally consistent with the expanded universe, and it's just made even more rich by being brought into the game.
Yep, and that brings us to but what we didn't mention was Jill or Sandra, the shipwright, who set us on this quest,
right,
to find the Morning Star, and fight Greymarrow. When we return to her, she reveals that she was the fourth member of the Morning Star crew, who in the journal is described as being named Jill, who basically dove overboard in the midst of their attack and fled for her life. And she has these regrets, and she basically changed her name and became a shipwright to hide from Greymarrow.
Right. She was the shipwright who was always talking about fighting a kraken, but she was really building a ship in case Greymarrow came back.
Yeah,
right?
And this is where Greymarrow was also in the Athena's Fortune novel, and in that he was kind of a bad guy. But I think that this element is what really makes him an intimidating lord, outside of just his design, because he has a very kind of intimidating design. He's very evil looking. But this notion that he was relentlessly hunting the Morningstar crew for ages, so much so that one member of that crew abandoned her crew out of fear because she knew they were always being relentlessly hunted, and then changed her name and still spent the whole rest of her life preparing for the fear that he would return and come after her. That really sets Grey Marrow up as a kind of a pretty badass bad guy and someone to fear. And then the fact that he took the members of her crew and trapped their souls in boxes so they could never pass on or do anything. That's also kind of intense.
Yeah, I just adore it too. Again, it's taking a pre-existing NPC character who's been in the game and just subverting it slightly to completely change the way you perceive her. Like the first one they really did it was Salty. He was taken out before the game officially launched, but then they just made him into a dirtbag, and then they made him into a parrot dirtbag, skeleton parrot dirtbag. I don't want to undersell it. And, you know, they did it with Wanda during the same event. They took Wanda and turned her evil and then replaced her with her twin sister, Wanda, but with an O. And you know, they added a little bit of elements like Tasha and her backstory with Briggsy. And now here we have Sandra, who is actually Jill. Sandra is just a fake identity.
I love the idea, since all the shipwrights in the game have a name that starts with the letter S, and this is true of everyone on the outposts. Everyone who works in the tavern has a name that starts with T. Everyone who works in the weapons shop has a name that starts with W, etc. And I love the idea that Jill said, I'm going to become a shipwright, and therefore I must change my name. And it's partially because she's hiding, but also it almost opens up the notion that maybe everybody changes their name in the Sea of Thieves if they fall into that role, because how else would every tavern keeper have a name that starts with T? It's, you know, and every clothing shop vendor has a name that starts with C, you know, etc. So it's kind of funny. Like if you join the hordes of men that are working for the Gold Hoarder and you want to become a Gold Hoarder, you have to change your name to something like Harry or Henry, because they all have a name that starts with H. That's such a silly thing.
I would just join the Gold Hoarders because I already have a name that starts with an H.
Yeah, but there's no organization that starts with a J, so I'm screwed. I'm gonna have to change my name unless I can start.
Well, Jill changed her name to Sandra, so just become a shipwright, and you can be. I'll
become Seth.
Seth, yeah, there
Seth
you go.
the Brash. Cool. All right, settled. I'll go to the. Who do you talk to for that? You go to the Secretary of State or like just the government? Oh, I forget. You guys don't have a Secretary of State office. You call it the What do you call that? The DMV. In Michigan, we don't have DMVs. We call them the Secretary of State. Yeah.
Really? I thought you were making a
joke. No.
Really
That's a real thing. We call it the Secretary of State office.
That's stupid,
it's where you
Jeff.
go
that
for...
sounds way too important for the fucking DMV.
Yeah, it sucks. No one likes to go there. Anyway, you probably can't change your name there either. It's just a DMV. Well, maybe you can. You can register to vote there. I don't know what they do there. I don't know anything. So then we get into Chapter 9. We, at this point, throughout the saga, we have been collecting some stones that were parts of the Shroudbreaker, these magic stones.
Right.
And they hand them back off to George, the mysterious stranger, so he can hold it for safekeeping, which is something I wasn't comfortable with from the start. How do I know I can trust that guy? But now we have the full completed Shroudbreaker, and they tell us to talk to the only pirate who has ever made it through the Shroud and remains alive today, and that is Captain Grace Morrow in the Devil's Roar region. Not the Devil's Shroud, the Devil's Roar, which is the volcanic region.
And Captain Morrow was introduced in Forsaken Shores, which introduced the Devil's Roar, not to be confused with the Devil's Shroud, which she made it through to get to the Devil's Roar, which was introduced in Forsaken Shores.
Right, and she's holding the completed Shroudbreaker, not to be confused with the Shroudbreaker, which is the name of her ship, which is shipwrecked on Morrow's Peak Outpost in the Devil's Roar through the Devil's Shroud in the Forsaken Shores. Anyway, the Shroudbreaker, she's holding onto it. We talk to her, and she kind of... I don't know. She doesn't really give us much information. She gives us a book that was the Pirate Lords with like a little bit of information from the Pirate Lord, and then I think a journal that was Briggsy's. It was documenting Briggsy's journey to the Shores of Gold, and
It always comes back to Briggsy in this.
yeah, which you don't realize that at first because the first chapter obviously has nothing to do with Briggsy, and then obviously all of the chapters after are like memories of Briggsy, but you don't really realize until you complete Chapter 9, The Shores of Gold, or as you're going through it and reading the journals, that really the entire saga has been about Briggsy, even the climax.
Yeah, because it's weird, because you dispatch with Briggsy, the character, in the second chapter, and then that's it for Briggsy in real time, but it's still about Briggsy up until the very end.
Yeah, you don't really... The end chapter is what gives you sort of her meaning and her intentions when she slowly started to become a Skeleton Lord, and why she went and hid all the parts of the Shroudbreaker, and why you just went on this whole goose chase, not a goose chase, but you went on this elaborate journey to find all the pieces she hid. You find out why she did that, and it brings the whole story full circle. But let's talk about the Shores of Gold. To get there, you now have a fancy, fully functional Shroudbreaker totem that, using magics, can get through the Devil's Shroud for a limited time in a limited direction, because it doesn't have a full charge or whatever the lore reason was, just enough to get us to the Shores of Gold and back.
Yeah, and so I was wondering during the whole 8 chapters leading up to this, like, how this would actually work. But they actually, like, pay it off. You actually get this device, and you actually get to sail through the Shroud in all of its creepy-ass glory. Because, you know, Jeff, I've talked about here on the Kongversation about how as a kid, there was always that fear of the unknown that would always keep me from really being too adventurous in games. Because I would always be worried about, like, going out of bounds or uncovering something too creepy for me to handle, being a sheltered latchkey kid. And so to have this experience of, oh, now you have this device and you have to sail through the creepiest part of the game, the part you're not supposed to go through. This would be complete, like, poison to me. The same poison that killed the ferryman. Were I not sailing with 3 of my friends who, you know, keeping me sane throughout this very, very frightening experience. But I applaud them. They paid it off. You get to do it, and they come up with the reason that, you know, you only have so much, I guess, magic in this before the power of the Devil's Shroud breaks it apart. So you know, if you wanted to, you could go on the other side of the map, away from where the Shores of Gold are, and sail and keep sailing, but it will kill you eventually. But you have enough to get to this island that's now on your map, and you have to... I was surprised about the location, honestly, because it was to the west, or excuse me, it was to the east, and for some reason I was picturing the Shores of Gold to the west part of the map.
Right, because you imagine sort of the Shores of Plenty, which is on the west side, is this, you know, very peaceful, bountiful, happy place, and the Shores of Gold sounds like this land of paradise. So it's easy to imagine that. But I like that, actually, though, they kind of structured the whole saga, like all 9 chapters, to gradually, in terms of the locations they send you, and I don't know if this was intentional, but they become more intense over time, because the first 3 chapters are very heavily focused in the Ancient Isles, and in the middle chapters are more focused in the Shores of Plenty, and chapters 7 and 8 are more focused in the wilds, and then chapter 9 you have to go into the Devil's Roar and then sail through the Devil's Shroud to the Shores of Gold. So it gradually gets like you don't do much in the wilds until near the end, and then you don't do anything in the Devil's Roar until the end, and then you're in this corner of the map, this bisection of the wilds and the Devil's Roar, the 2 most desolate, kind of eerie places, and in that corner, that's where you find the Shores of Gold. And this is where you start to realize that this location is not a paradise, but more of a nefarious and eerie presence than you first expected.
Yeah, so you sail there and you can kind of start making out the silhouette as you get closer to it. And in the lore of the game, the Devil's Shroud surrounds it, but it's not covering it. And I think that's the case for all of these islands that are, still in the Shroud, like Treasure Trove Cove, which explains why things can live on it. Characters can get stranded on these islands and still, and not suffocate under the oppression of the cloud. It's that it surrounds the island, but it doesn't cloak it completely. Like the sun shines through on the shores of gold, but it's kind of eerie. It's kind of the light doesn't really refract the same way, so it's kind of gives it this like golden hue, and really really like smart effect that they pulled off to make it feel slightly not of this earth, but still part of the same game world. While we were on this island, it really felt like we were completely separated from the rest of the game, and then we'd have to remind ourselves we're technically still on a shared server with other people. It just you felt completely detached,
Yeah.
but in a way that made sense.
Yeah, every other quest that you've done up to this point, you are visiting locations that you've been before, and they're locations that are, the server is not that big. You're right surrounded by other players. So if you have to go to an island, say Wanderer's Refuge, that is an island that another player could also get a quest to go to and dig up a chest or fight a skeleton. And now their adventure is crossing over with yours, and you might run into conflict or just a crazy scenario might play out. And whether or not you do have that happen, you're going to see them on the horizon at all points. You can look, in any direction, and somewhere you're going to see some player ships off in one direction or another. Once you get to the shores of gold, it is the first time you're visiting an entirely brand new island in the Tall Tales saga. And 2, you can't see the rest of the map very well from there. You can see we kind of remarked on, you can see the skeleton cloud in the sky that marks a skeleton fort. You can see that off in the distance, and it kind of reminds you that, oh yeah, the Sea of Thieves is right over there, and there's like other players are within a close distance, but they can't get to us if they don't have the Shroud Breaker, which is a really weird feeling that you feel alone and playing almost a private game.
Yeah, and it really just set the mood, I think, for this whole island, because this island is an island of the ancients. You've got the ancient isles in the game, but this really feels like it was a central hub of the civilization that existed in the Sea of Thieves long before, the age of piracy. And that's really sold with the statues, this little corner of the jungle where you have these immense figures sitting in these thrones. And I'm a sucker for stuff like this. Like my favorite part of classic original Xbox game, Knights of the Old Republic, was when you got to Korriban, the Sith planet, and you had all of those statues of the Sith Lords in the canyon. It's such a disconcerting visual, like the scale of it, and just it like the sense of history that it immediately thrust upon you.
It's
Same
a lot
thing
like
here.
when you're
I love it.
in the Wild West levels of Donkey Kong Barrel Blast on the Wii, and you're just bongoing over like a ravine, and you look, and there's like giant Kong heads carved in the canyon, and you're trying to like stop Funky Kong from bongoing you faster than you bongo, but you're overcome with this sense of scale of the length of time in the universe.
That was going to be my second comparison. I'm surprised I didn't go with that one.
I think that really Donkey Konga 2 has like the Hall of Records with the Kong heads too. So it's always
does.
bongo
It
games
does.
that have this really oppressive sense of scale at the past.
Yeah, I will say about the bongo games, weird tangent, Jeff, but I will say about the Donkey Kong games that utilize the bongo controls, they do introduce a shit ton of lore, a surprisingly healthy amount of context for the world of Donkey Kong that you would not expect.
Right. And so we're on this island, the Shores of Gold. It's got these awesome,
nothing to do with bongos.
Awesome ancient artifacts and everything. And what's really cool, this island is just massive. You're exploring this brand new location, almost like completely in private. Like you technically are in private, but you do have the possibility of other players showing up. But it really feels like you're on a private, massive island that is probably double the size of any other island that's already in the game that you've already previously explored. And the whole thing is just a playground for you to solve the puzzles that are presented on how to proceed. And there's new music, there's new like aesthetics, the whole, like, you know how every region of the game has a kind of different look to its fauna, or flora, and sort of the environment and the hue of everything, and kind of they all have a distinct identity of the kind of climate of that area. And this one is a brand new one, unique to the Shores of Gold, or actually the island is technically called Tribute Peak, which might as well just be Pride Rock or something. I don't know. This is the Lion King, but you've got this private environment. It's got new skeletons that are creepy little gold hoarder like minions with gold coins for eyeballs, and some of them have like bags over their heads. It's just really weird. It's eerie. It's an eerie place, but it's awesome. You've got like your quest book gives you a map of it, sort of a hand-drawn map, and it always amazes me how the pirates in the Sea of Thieves lore are all really good artists. But
especially Tasha.
Yeah. Oh, she's the best. And you've got to travel to these different puzzle vault locations, these ancient puzzles, and they all factor into ultimately heading underground into an elaborate system of caves.
Yes, and you mentioned platforming earlier, but I would say this is really where the platforming elements that were first introduced in Art of the Trickster really pay off into genuine platform gaming in Sea of Thieves, which I would have never expected in my life. Like, this is literally a 3D platformer. Yeah. In this portion of the game. There is a part where you have to, like, there are the normal booby traps, like you saw in Art of the Trickster, which tripped me up quite a bit. It was pretty humiliating because I kept dying again and again. And this is when Chris Alcock stumbled in to the live stream too. So it was like extra mockery. But then we got to the point where you have these ship mast, this rigging and whatnot, that you're underground, but there's like this ship you're basically climbing over, and it's basically a 3D version of Main Brace Mayhem, the rigging stages from Donkey Kong Country 2.
Which is so intense. Can you imagine in Donkey Kong Country 2 if you're walking along those masts, but you can fall off to the left or the right of your character? That's what you can do here. It's three-dimensional.
There is a reason Donkey Kong 64 never really tried to replicate this. But here it is in Sea of Thieves. And I was excellent at this part. Like, everybody else was falling left and right. Like, you and Briegel and Cameron. I think I got it mostly, like, I got most of the portions done in one. A couple, there were one or two I had to do a few times over. Because, I say this because there are save points. Yeah. This is really where it kind of breaks with Sea of Thieves a little bit, in that you have save points, but it's done in a very clever way. mermaid statues. Not the statues that you have to hack and shoot to get the gems, but statues of, or that they're evocative of the mermaids that pop up that take you back to the ship when your ship has left you behind.
Yeah, what's really great here, so the mermaid lore is kind of about pirates that are cursed and turned into mermaids. And so the mermaids that look more human-like are not fully transformed yet, and they're the ones that still help you out and will help you return to your ship if you fall off, and they've got kind of a benevolent nature. And then the mermaids that are fully transformed into like fishy-looking weirdos that are there with the big eyes, those ones are the ones that have gone more, I don't know if they're evil, but they're not like, they've lost their humanity at that point. They're fully mermaid. And those are the designs that the mermaid statues are designed after, that those mermaid statues that you find littering the world that deal damage to you when you're close, and they're like an actual kind of an enemy to defeat to earn a gem. These look like those statues, but with the human-like characteristics to their faces and stuff, so that shows that they're more benevolent, and I love that detail. Right. But yeah, this is a huge gameplay bonus here, that like the whole system wouldn't work without save points, because this is such an elaborate series of challenges that if you died and had to start from the beginning every time back at your boat, it would just be too much.
So I mentioned like Main Brace Mayhem, but I think like the equivalent length, if you take a 2D platformer and a stage in a 2D platformer and you stretch it out into 3D, would be something like Bramble Scramble or something, like just very elaborate and very, very difficult. And so, yeah, like it's forgiving in that you have these mermaid checkpoints, save points, whatever, and you get through a chunk. If you can get through a little chunk to the next checkpoint, then you're good. Like, and you can go from there. So it's like taking these little portions that are divided out and trying, like, just getting better, and you get a little bit better each time you do it. And sometimes some people in your crew will be better at the traps and the Indiana Jones portions, and some people will be better at the 3D platforming portions of it. And that was very fun to kind of see where our crew's strength lied. But we were very fair. We all waited for each other, and we all encouraged each other. So it never felt like any of us were really holding each other back. Yeah,
this is really, I guess I hadn't thought of it, but this is really the first time probably any of us have gone through a gauntlet of platforming challenges in a multiplayer team setting, where you are playing in the same little realm, but it's 4-player. There's 4 of us, and we're trying to get through it together, and that's really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of intimidating at first because, again, I'm not the best gamer. I'm not somebody who prides himself on his skills, but so when I kept dying, I'm just like, I'm starting to feel my face get a little red, and I'm just like, okay, this is a little humiliating. But then when suddenly I'm good at something and everybody else is struggling, I'm like, okay, we all have our different strengths. This is fine. this is what it's all about. Little life lessons taught along the way of our journey, to this final boss fight.
You look at every other puzzle they've implemented through the previous chapters, and they all, I don't want to say they were held back, but there was a constraint of they were built into environments on islands that already exist. So, for instance, Art of the Trickster is running through this elaborate cave system underground. That whole cave system has always been there since launch, but there was nothing in it. It was just empty. And for one, that's really cool that they had this empty space that maybe they always planned to do something with it. Now they have done something with it, but they had to use that space that was previously there. With the Shores of Gold, they created this huge, elaborate system of platforming challenges because they could create it from the ground up. This is a brand new island. They didn't have to add this onto Wanderer's Refuge and have it make sense with the environment that's there. You know, and that makes it really cool. That it gave them total freedom to get creative with the environments. You're going through these caves. In fact, you hit a point where there's like a drawbridge, not a drawbridge, but a rope bridge that is down. It's like broken, and there's just spikes at the bottom. And so you have to find another way across. So you go through a cave on the side, and like a half an hour later, you're working through the caves, and you come to the same rope bridge, but now you're on the opposite side, and you see how the geometry has looped back on itself, and you've made it along. And that's just really cool. And another cool thing they did was how they used the raising the capstan, raising the anchor effect in some of those puzzles and some of those environments.
Yeah, I think this might be my favorite environment in the game now.
Yeah.
Just this whole underground labyrinth, because it's so fine-tuned for the types of games I grew up playing, but incorporated into Sea of Thieves, which is a game I already love. So it's just kind of like getting your peanut butter in your chocolate, you know?
Yeah. It's like getting dinosaurs in your Ice Age movie. Oof. Chef kiss, bone apple tea. So you make it to the end of this gauntlet of many challenges, including platforming, traps, skeleton fights, the whole 9 yards, and then what do you get at the end?
Well, you finally meet a character who has been hinted at, alluded to, promoted, had toys made of, but has never been in the actual game up until this point, and that is the Gold Hoarder. Yeah,
so the Gold Hoarder Trading Company, which has always been like a foundational element of Sea of Thieves, they're just the guys that accept the gold, the chests from you when you go out and dig up chests. They come from the Gold Hoarder, the original Gold Hoarder. This is a skeleton lord. Tons of lore about him. He's in the comic books. He's in the novel. You can read all about his genesis of how he becomes how he is. And there's, you on the Kongversation are even going to host an episode all about that novel eventually. So, if you have read it, tune in for that to get more. But basically, this crazy guy is the reason all of this is this way. This is the reason that the Gold Hoarders exist, and they've got all these keys to open the chest and get all the gold. And when you get to the bottom of the cave system, you find his lair, which is where all the gold ends up. Well, not all the gold, because they give you a cut, but this is where the rest.
So this is where I was a little confused. So he is still pulling the strings of the current Gold Hoarder.
That's kind of the plot twist of this, because that was not how we thought it was. We assumed that the Gold Hoarders evolved out of his original setup and that he is now kind of irrelevant. But this, I think, makes it definitive. They mention it, that essentially all the gold. Well, I think that what they say, they have Briggsy in her journals speculating on, is this where the Gold Hoarders bring all their gold or something along those lines? But that's the implication. The implication is that the gold of the Gold Hoarders is still being delivered here. And they mentioned that because the Devil's Shroud ebbs and flows and is moving around, there are times when it becomes accessible to very well-stocked, like, I would imagine that an individual player could never do this, but in the lore, there are times when the shroud opens up just enough that a team as well stocked as the Gold Hoarders would be able to make it back and forth from the shores of gold for a limited window because of the ebb and flow of the shroud.
Right, I'm picturing, like, in the novel, slight spoilers, like when Ramsey is first penetrating the shroud, like he has a very elaborate setup to do it, and so something like that.
So all the gold is ending up here, and and this is the riches in such that you were hoping to find if we travel to the shores of gold. But unfortunately, it's not just here for the taking, because the man of the house has something to say about that. The gold hoarder, who is a very menacing skeleton lord with a very large golden shovel and a golden jaw and like gemstone eyes. And this was my favorite fight of the skeleton lords.
You said man of the house, and that just that sounds like some sort of like Tyler Perry TBS
Is it
sitcom.
Man of the House? It's a comedy. Is that like a Chevy Chase movie or some stupid shit? I don't know. You talk about the Shores of Gold, and I'll Google it.
Was that like a Tim Allen movie from the 90s?
It might have been Tim.
Like,
I was thinking Chevy Chase, but Tim Allen is the same ballpark there. It was Tommy. Well, there's one. Okay, no, not Tommy Lee Jones. That's a different movie. There's two movies with the title Man of the House, 1995 and 2005.
Of course there is.
Oh, the first one was starring Chevy Chase. I knew it. And Jonathan Taylor Thomas and Farrah Fawcett. What a cast.
JTT. Wow.
So Chevy Chase doesn't want you to steal his gold, and he has an army of skeletons at his disposal. So
that's why he has all those banks. Do you have Chevy Chase banks there?
We have Chevy Chase Bank. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's a gold hoarder.
For those of you who aren't in the U.S., we're not making this up. There are banks. There's a town in Maryland near Cameron called Chevy Chase, and nobody knows why. Like we've researched this. I think we've talked about this on the Kongversation. Nobody knows the connection between Chevy Chase, the SNL comic actor who is a well-known asshole, and the town and the banks. It's like, what is the connection between the gold hoarder and the gold hoarders in Sea of Thieves?
Right. See, I've been taking my chest to the Chevy Chasers, and I'm like wondering, did Chevy Chase start them? Do they still work for him? I don't know. And so this was, out of the three Skeleton Lord fights, this was my favorite. Even though they're all pretty much the same. I mean, they're very similar. They all have the same attack patterns of the Lord themselves can summon more waves of skeletons to defend themselves.
Right.
They can slam the ground to give you a knockback effect, or they can teleport away to another location like nearby to kind of get away from you. And they all three do this. But for some reason, it feels like the Gold Hoarder fight is a bit more dynamic. I don't know. The execution of it feels tighter.
It's because it uses his love of gold and incorporates that into all of his moves. Like because you're fighting on a big Scrooge McDuck like Smaug pile of treasure. The skellies pop out of that. He's got a big sack of coins that he slams down.
Yeah, he makes it. He makes it
like,
rain. He's throwing gold coins all over.
He does. He literally makes it rain with his gold coins. So I think because of that, it's very themed around his greed and his love of these little nuggets.
Yeah, and when he dives in to like teleport, he takes out his shovel like he's digging a hole that he goes into, which is really cool. Like he dives down with the, you get the digging element. I wish they would have used the shovel a bit more like a weapon, like he would swing it at you, but that would require a lot more work to incorporate a new weapon, because all the skeleton lords use the same weapons that other skeletons and players use.
Maybe he would just like menacingly like start digging your own grave. Ooh. And like and it's just like, it's going to take 20 minutes, but he's going to dig your grave.
He's
and you
making eye contact with you as he digs a 6 foot long hole that's 6 foot deep.
So, for a couple years now, like this character has been in our imagination, but this is it. Like this is our encounter with him. This is what it's all been leading up to. And it wasn't disappointing. I quite enjoyed this fight. Like I was really getting into it. It was a lot of fun. We were running around this elaborate treasure room, straight out like Erebor, the Lord of the Lonely Mountain for all of you Tolkien nerds out there. But it was just like that, and it was so much fun. And like you said, it was a much more dynamic fight, possibly because we weren't fighting on any pre-existing geometry on like islands that already existed. So it was actually tailor-made for this fight. So it never felt
Jonathan
like...
Taylor Thomas made.
Yeah, JTT'd down to the last detail, and it really did feel like we were supposed to do this here. It was like never like the Briggsy fight or anything where like, oh shit, I fell off the island. The shockwave kicked me back too far. No, it was perfect, and I was loving every second of it. Grinning like an idiot until the end, Jeff, until the very, very last second of the boss fight when it all went wrong for me.
Yeah, this is where we run into the pitfalls of a multiplayer shared experience where anybody can die, but the fight keeps going because other players are not dead.
Right.
Which you would not get in a single-player game.
When we said this was basically Sea of Thieves 2 baked into the cake that is Sea of Thieves, the original, that's great. That's brilliant. But there is a downside to that, and that is the pre-existing structure of the game still has to be accommodated for. So you can't get anything that really breaks that. And unfortunately, that meant that if I died at the exact same seconds that the Gold Hoarder died, which is what happened, I literally saw him die as my screen went black. It meant that I went to the Ferry of the Damned, and it meant that the big, dramatic, cinematic scene that this has all been building up to is playing for you three while I'm on the Ferry of the Damned. So I'm like freaking out, like I'm missing it. So I go back through the portal, but because the boss fight is over, I don't come back in the Gold Hoarder's room. I'm back on the ship.
Yeah, so the way they structured this is a little awkward, and there's definitely room for improvement. But basically what happens is the game has saved you a save point in that Gold Hoarder's room. As we said, there's save points all along this elaborate dungeon as we make our way deeper and deeper. And the minute that you defeat the Gold Hoarder, the tale technically has officially ended. And so it resets those details like having a lore book in your inventory or having a save point saved down here. And it's important to reset those details because you don't want to like sail away from the island and go do something else and then you die and then you get sent all the way back to the Gold Hoarder temple. There has to be a moment when they say, this is when that save point stops being active. The problem is it is set for the minute that Gold Hoarder dies, and it doesn't depend on whether your whole crew is present or not to end that tale. So Hyle was kicked back to the boat and not able to respawn in the temple with us, and we had this really great, just amazing climactic ending that really brings me to tears when I see it a little bit. I well up when I see this. And the whole time Hyle is like not able to experience it because he died.
Hyle the story and lore guy is the one who missed it. So that was like legitimately soul crushing for me. I was like, we were streaming this too, so it was.
Oh, it was awful for the stream because the only point of view they had was Hyle's, and so yeah.
So anybody following along at home missed it too. So as the camera of the stream, not only was I heartbroken for myself, but I felt like I let down everybody who was following along that entire afternoon.
You know, we really should have like done a dual, like a co-stream of multiple viewpoints, because if that happened, you know, it would have sucked that you're not present for it physically, but you could have been like, oh shit, I can't see it. Well, I'll just have to watch Jeff's stream and watch it from his point of view so I don't miss it. And you could have done that.
Right. And like, I don't want to like oversell this because it's not like the game is so unfair that you don't get rewarded for finishing it. You don't get your
Yeah,
rewards.
he got all the rewards,
like everything.
but yeah,
I just missed the context, the resolution of this 9-chapter story that we've been playing since the end of April. So, I was legitimately sad that afternoon, and it's a sadness I didn't really break out of for a few hours. My pirate's character was also sad, Jeff, and because Sea of Thieves is a game where you are the pirate you want to be, I have been thinking long and hard about how this affects my pirate, because out of the crew, I am the only one who wasn't a pirate legend yet. I'm still not a pirate legend. And to have, well, spoilers, I guess the pirate lord shows up, Ramsey, and delivers this speech or something. I don't know, because I haven't seen it clearly. But because I'm like the only one who isn't a pirate legend yet, and because I missed the pirate lord like thanking me, I feel like a complete fucking fool and a failure and basically like a fraud. So I think going forward, my pirate's going to have to go through a character arc where he goes through some very dark places. I think I'm going to shave my head. I'm going to become a little like darker and meaner and flirt with the dark side a bit. And I don't know how I'm going to pull out of this funk, but my pirate's going to go through some things, Jeff. And it's the only acceptable way forward I can see, because I imagine my character has spent the last roughly week and a half since this happened to him, drinking in the taverns, just like pissing and moaning about how he's just worthless. And by the next time we all meet up, he's going to be a different Cousin Russell than the carefree dancing guy that you've come to know and love these last 15 months. So, yeah. But hey, tomorrow never dies, as they say, and I do have to replay this 4 times anyway to get the legendary commendation. So, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna see it eventually. It just really hurts. It really hurts.
Yeah, and I reached out on Twitter to kind of shout, tag Mike Chapman on that ordeal, and he said, that's an issue that they're aware of, that possibility, or they're aware of that kind of outcome, and that they're keen to fix it, which is really good. They're aware. Saying they're keen to fix it means that they aren't necessarily working on it, or that it's in the plans, I imagine. I'm reading into it, but anyway, I think that it's not hard to imagine how it could be done differently, but actually changing it might be hard because it's already out, and how to go about, because the way you would every other chapter that we've done previously, you don't trigger an ending cutscene or a bit of dialogue until you deliver an item to a location, and that one triggers automatically when you kill the gold hoarder. So I think if there was just some pop-up that says, take that skull and bring it over to the throne, the golden throne, and when you do that, if the game said, take the skull to the golden throne, and then the tale has not ended yet until you do that, we could sit and wait for Hyle to respawn before we take it to the throne, and he would still respawn in the throne room, and he wouldn't miss anything. I think that giving the players the option of when to trigger it is important, and I hope they fix that. But that being said, the Shores of Gold adventure is not over, and it lies in wait for us to revisit, and of course we're encouraged to revisit it. So we're gonna get you that ending, even if your pirate is going through like a emo phase in the in between.
Yeah, I mean, I might even kill a pig or two. I don't even know. I can't be held responsible for what he does this point forward.
You can't be. Yeah, I'm a little nervous because the next event is all about gunpowder barrels, and I don't want to know what Hyle's going to do with our gunpowder barrels when he gets his hands on them.
Yeah, they're going to be keen to fix this after they see what I do.
Yeah, so, I mean, aside from that, I want to call it a fallacy of their function there that can happen. Aside from that anticlimax of how you experience the ending, clearly the Shores of Gold chapter is amazing and maybe the best bit of gameplay in the whole game, or the most exciting in the whole saga, of course. And up until this point, even you seemed very excited about all of it, so I think you'll agree.
I loved it.
But how about Anniversary Update or Tall Tales as a whole? Like final thoughts. They completely renovated so many basic features, from ship combat to food and health regeneration, and then added in this whole story campaign, added in a whole competitive mode. Final thoughts here for the audience at home on, whether they're on the fence or what. What do you think?
I've tried to be patient with people when it comes to Sea of Thieves, and I do understand ultimately Sea of Thieves will not be for everybody. Like, not every Rare fan is going to be able to get on board with this game. I get that. However, Jeff, at this point, I feel like let's say 60% of the audience who hasn't played Sea of Thieves or tried it and didn't like it at first, if they don't go back and play it now and give it a chance, I feel like they're just being willfully stubborn. Because I feel like this game, it's so fleshed out now. It's so robust now, and there's something for nearly everybody. And they're not even done adding stuff to it. Like, we're treating this like this is like the big capper, but it's not. This is just yet more improvements along the path to even more to come. So it's only going to get better from here, which is weird to think about because I feel like this is it, But yeah, if you can't get on board with it now, I don't see how you ever will.
Yeah.
Because this is so far from where the game launched in March 20th of last year. And I loved it then, but I also knew there was a lot more to come, and this was just like the promise of the future, and the future is here, and they paid it off.
Yeah, I mean, not just the Anniversary Update itself and everything that this update added, but you also look at the updates in between March 20th and now. All, the Hungering Deep, the Cursed Sails, the Forsaken Shores, the Shrouded Spoils, every update in between those. The game has grown tremendously, and Anniversary Update on top of all of that, it's just a night and day difference. And I'll give you an example. Is one of my college roommates just got into the game just after E3, like maybe 2 or 3 or 4 weeks ago. Not that long ago. He just got into the game because Game Pass was on sale, and he decided to finally jump on board Game Pass and try out Sea of Thieves after I have been kind of gushing about it for 2 years now. And I've been playing with him constantly since then. And it's so amazing to see the game through brand new eyes. And watching him take the first steps of his journey, doing his first Gold Hoarder quest and his first Order of Souls quests, the first time he's doing a Skeleton Fort, things like that, which are just great, amazing memories I have. But at the same time, he's playing such a different game than when I did it, because we're saying, hey, let's play today. What do you want to do? And he's like, well, I'm looking at these old Bildred adventures, and I want to go back and earn some of those doubloons. And I'm like, cool, let's go do friggin' some cursed or Festival of the Damned Lanterns. And he's like, okay, well, what about Tall Tales? I kind of want to start that. All right, cool. Let's start chapter 1. And now this is a guy who's made it through half of the Tall Tales. He's done, he's leveling up all his factions. He's done, but while he's doing all that, he's doing fishing, and he's fighting megalodons, and he's starting alliances, and all these features that weren't there when I took my first baby steps into the Sea of Thieves. And it's insane to watch the game from brand new eyes now and realize that this is a incredibly more robust version of the game. And when you watch it change bit by bit over the time, no single change seems to have like completely upended the game. But when you watch it through fresh eyes now, you realize how much is really there, how much is added up over time. And it is incredible. And like you said, they're not even done. So I think, give it, if you want to give it another shot, or you have the option to give it another shot, you should reach out to me on Twitter or Hyle, and we can set you up with our Discord that we use to organize play sessions, and we can get you a full crew of people to play with and show you some of the new features, or just walk you through the ropes, and guarantee that you have a good time with friendly people.
And it might even be fun too to even do like an occasional stream of Thieves where we sail with new people, like their virgin maiden voyages. We stream that because people love watching people lose their virginity online. So why not just make a thing of that? We'll bring in large crowds of people for that. But yeah, that might be a fun thing. Just, we're not doing anything elaborate this week. We're not doing a build rat adventure. We're just going to sail with new people and experience the game through their eyes. That would be fun, and I'm totally on board with that.
Right. So, reach out. We'll get you some friends on your Xbox friends list that'll play with you. We'll get you a bunch of friendly pirates that know the ropes and know how to have fun. And I think that, like I've said before, I've defended that this game can be played single player, that this game is a lot of fun at all player counts, that it doesn't just have to be with a very narrow, specific set of people that are going to make the game fun for you. And I believe that's true, that you can enjoy the game in any circumstance, but I don't think you can learn the game, your first baby steps, without a good set of friends, a good set of players that are going to help you through it. Because I do think a lot of the game's introductory steps rely on the social element of you having people that can show you the ropes. And you can get to a point where playing solo is very fun and doable, but if you jump in the deep end completely solo and blind, that is what turns people off. So I'm changing my tactic. I want to get every new player that I can find that wants to get them in with me and my crew, and make sure we show them a good time so they can get hooked. That's not a pun on a pirate hook either, but if you want it to be, it can be.
Honestly, I feel like that's a good philosophy, though, not just for Sea of Thieves, but for life. Like, for anything that you don't find enjoyable at first, you just have to find the right group of people to experience it with. So, Jeff, how about we watch Man of the House?
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.